Hello, once again, it's James here with WSI. And my guest this week, before I introduce my guest, I'm going to give you a little story. I believe these days there's a lot of divisiveness in the world of wrestling and in the real world as well. WWE versus AEW. There's modern wrestling versus old school wrestling. There's Jim Cornette versus Vince Russo. What we need is a man who is impartial. What we need is a man who calls it as he sees it. What we need is a man who will call it right down the middle, Daddy. It is, of course, Bill
Hey,
Alfonso.
Daddy,
How
I
are you
like
doing?
that. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on one of the bigger shows in the UK, WSI, Daddy, with James, man.
That's the spirit.
Great. I'm happy to be here in that space with my people in the UK. And I've been there quite a few times, and I love that area of the world.
Yeah, you said the first time you were here was it '93 when you were touring with the WWF?
Yes, it was Hulk Hogan and Yokozuna in the main event. And we did 7 cities and 5 countries in 7 days.
Deary
But I
me.
did manage to go to the Hard Rock Cafe in London and the Hard Rock Cafe in Berlin and buy everybody buys the T-shirts, right? But I bought the leather jackets. So I got it from London, Tokyo, Berlin, from all over the world. Pretty cool.
I'm going to give you a fact here. I've been to the Hard Rock Cafe in Cambodia.
Wow, Cambodia!
Yeah, it's
my
like
goodness.
It's like the most remote Hard Rock Cafe in the world. I only went there because I didn't. I just went there because there was practically nowhere else to get a drink. There was just it was next to all the temples in Angkor Wat, and I just thought this is the weirdest place to put a Hard Rock Cafe. And I've been to another one in Vietnam. They're just everywhere. Those things.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I would love to go to that part of the world, Vietnam and stuff like that.
Did you?
Well, not right now. Let the virus calm down a little bit because it's really shut the planet down.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I mean, you're in Florida at the moment, aren't you? So you're in one of the more liberal states as far as shutdowns go.
Right. Yep. We're everybody's got their shots here. Mostly everybody's got their shots, and I've got mine, of course. And I travel quite a bit throughout the United States, so I want to stay healthy.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I've got my shots, and I'm already eligible for a booster, and it was only 3 months since I had the last one. I am going to go into the meat of the interview here, Bill, and as I've said before, there's going to be mostly chronological order. I'll throw a couple of different things in, but you do, you do quite a lot of conventions here and there, don't you? Do you still do the conventions?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to do the conventions. That's one of my main deals. I work for a few different little independent companies throughout the United States. And the conventions keep me going. And I love doing them because I'm one-on-one with the people, that have watched me for the last 40 years. It's pretty cool. And then I get a chance to see all the wrestlers, all my buddies.
Yeah.
That, I've worked with throughout the years, like Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Kane and, Undertaker and Cactus Jack and RVD and Sabu and so many more, so many guys. It's really cool doing the conventions.
When you do the conventions, you must therefore have a story of bumping into Lonely Virgil.
Virgil, the wrestler, the black kid?
Yeah.
Virgil's quite the character. I worked with him in the 90s for WWF. It was called WWF back in the day. Now it's WWE, but he's quite the character.
Has he, with any conventions you've been to, have you just found him in the corner, uninvited, and he set up his own table?
Yes, he's that way for some reason. And he talks about himself quite a bit,
Oh, dearie me. Right, let's go to the beginning of the career then. So it's actually quite easy to find a wrestler's, like a general career arc, what territories they visited in what year, and you can get a pretty good idea from their match results. For you, as a referee, there's obviously not referee results, and therefore it's a bit harder. So I'll go through the territories you appeared in. But first off, how does a 21-year-old kid from New Hampshire end up in the wrestling business in Texas?
Well, actually, I'm from Florida, and I was born and raised here. That's on my bio. I don't know how the New Hampshire got in there, and I don't know how I'm related to my brothers, so-and-so, and that's wrong. So, but I was born and raised in Florida, which was a hotbed for professional wrestling back in the day when they had the territories. It's quite cool. I didn't know that growing up until my father came home. He had lunch with the sports editor for the newspaper. And they used to comp him a couple wrestling tickets for writing the results of every Tuesday night, who won, who lost, the great Malenko and Eddie Graham and stuff. So my dad came home with 2 wrestling tickets, and I was about 12 years old. And he said, "Hey, Billy, I got tickets for wrestling." I said, "Wrestling? What's that? Never heard of it, never seen it." This was on a Friday. So he gave me the tickets, and so they set up on the fireplace all weekend. And so curiosity got me. I said, "Okay, let me go check this wrestling now. Let me go see what it's about." I had no clue. It's on TV every week. So I walk in, there's Eddie Graham, the blonde hair, the great Malenko, Bobo Brazil, and many others. And I fell in love with the business that day. And I said, this is what I want to do. But I was so small, it was like 150 pounds. Now I'm like 165. So there's no way I could compete and be a wrestler. So the next best thing would be in the ring, would be the referee. And somehow after going to the matches for years, I start meeting guys. I met the Rock's dad, Rocky Johnson, and King Curtis. And they steered me in a direction as a referee because I was small and make them look big, and it was just a good fit. And then when being in the right place at the right time, bam, I got my chance, and I've been in the business for 42 years.
So I hear a lot of stories because I do a weekly show with Don Morocco, so I've heard a load of stories about King Curtis.
I love Don Morocco. Tell him I said hello, please. Fonzie from Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. I will do. I speak to him every week.
Hawaii? He still lives in Hawaii?
Yeah, still on Sunset Beach, still swimming in the waters. Now he can't surf anymore because his knees are shot. But other than that, he's got a good life going.
Congratulations, Don Morocco.
I know, he's a good man. With Florida, who was the one person who actually, let's say you probably went to a lot of wrestlers and said, I really want to be in the business. Who was the first name who took you seriously and, put their arm around you?
Rocky Johnson, the Rock's dad, and King Curtis. King Curtis was a big name back in the day.
And how did they, how did you sort of convince them that you'd be a good fit for a referee?
Well, after going every Tuesday night to the wrestling matches and watch them, and then found out where they go after the wrestling matches, they went to this bar and they went to eat. I would show up, and then they'd always see me. And then one of them asked me one day, "Hey, would you mind going to get us sandwiches, or would you mind picking somebody up at the airport?" And that was my way in. I said, "Oh my God, yes!" So I was known for pick up the guys, or bring them food or whatever. And then next thing you know, Rocky Johnson invited me to his home. I had an apartment out of his home somewhere else, but invited me over. We became friends and stuff. And he really pushed for me to be ready. He saw how much I loved the business. And I was a perfect size.
Exactly. You don't want to overshadow the wrestlers in the ring, don't you?
Correct.
Exactly. Can you remember the very first match you ever refereed?
Yes. So my friend, one of my best friends, who, remember, the sports editor for the newspaper gave my dad 2 tickets. So I took my best friend, David Canals, the Cuban assassin, David Sierra. He got himself booked in Texas, and he said, "Hey, Fonzie, why don't you go with me to Texas, and I'll take care of you. I'll pay your way. And let's see if we can get you a job refereeing. I'll tell the promoters," which was the Funks, Joe Blanchard, Von Erich. Those are the promoters in Texas. "I'll tell them you're my little brother and that you're referee. And if they can use you, my little brother's going to be with me all summer." So they used me a couple of times in 6 months. And my first professional match, this is why Sabu and I love each other so much. When I met Sabu for the first time, I told him the story. So the first time I actually got paid, I made $90. This was in probably 78, 79. And the main event, which I refereed, was the Sheik, Sabu's uncle, the original Sheik, and Terry Funk in a chain match. And the Sheik stabbed me with a pencil and tore my shirt off, and I got through that really good. Somehow I did a fantastic job, and then from there I started getting more bookings, and then I moved back to Florida.
Oops, the video's gone.
Okay,
there you go. You're back. You're back. You're back.
Okay, that was a call.
So you're getting more bookings after the Sheik match?
Yes, yeah. The promoters had a little respect for me because I did real good. I handled myself good, and then I was in Texas for like 6 months. But the whole time I was there, I only worked like 4 or 5 times in the 6 months as a referee because they had their own referees. They had David Manning, they had Bronco Lubitsch, they had this guy, they had that guy. So there was no room for an extra referee. So I told my friend, I said, look, Dave, I appreciate you bringing me out to Texas and you paid my way and paid my food and all that. But, you know, I've been out here 6 months and I worked 4 or 5 times. I'm going back to Florida. So all the wrestlers caught wind that I was leaving and going back to Florida. And a wrestler named Paul Jones, number one, a small guy, Paul Jones, was a great wrestler back in the day. He said, hey, Fonzie, I heard you're leaving. I said, yeah, because I can't get a spot here refereeing. They got their own referees. He said, well, listen, when you get back to Florida, I want you to go to the Florida Championship Wrestling office. And Jerry Briscoe is a dear friend of mine. And he's assistant booker for Dusty Rhodes. Dusty was the booker in Florida. And you tell him that I sent you and that you're a referee and you're available. You just came back from Texas and you're back in Florida. If there's any way they can use you, so on and so on. And Jerry Briscoe told me, he said, well, Fonzie, it was nice to meet you. You got the background. I didn't tell him I only worked 4 times, 6 months. But I told him I did this and I did that, but I wasn't lying. And he said, well, you got the qualifications, you got a little background. And if we can, unfortunately, we have our own referees here, but maybe this summer we're going to run 2 shows on the weekends and maybe you can work the show. Leave your number downstairs with Charlie Lay, the guy at the front desk. So I said, thank you very much. This was on a Monday morning. So I left my name and stuff with Charlie Lay. And Monday, they went to West Palm Beach. Florida ran West Palm Beach, was the 200 mile from Tampa. Tampa was the base, was the office.
Yeah.
So they ran West Palm on Monday, Tampa Tuesday, Miami Wednesday, Thursday, Jacksonville, Friday and Saturday was spot shows, and Sunday was Orlando. It would repeat itself back in the day, week after week after week. We were in the same building every Monday, West Palm, every Tuesday, Tampa. So I left the Florida office after Jerry Briscoe said, leave your name. I was a little discouraged, but at least he said, leave your name down. If we can use you, we'll call you. So I get a call Tuesday morning, the next day, and it was Jerry Briscoe. And he said, hey, they would like to have you come down and referee tonight at the Armory. And I said, okay, great. Thank you. What happened was the referee that they had was driving to West Palm Beach with the 3 main events in the car, and it was sold out. West Palm Beach was sold out. So they had the semi-main event, the main event, and he had a flat tire. The referee had a flat tire, and he had no spare tire in the car. So they missed the show. They get the 3 main events in the car. And Dusty fired him on the spot. Dusty fired us. There's no reason to have no spare tire. You got the 3 main events in the car. So I refereed Tuesday night. Then they asked me, hey, can you make Miami tomorrow, Wednesday? I said, yes, thank you. Can you make Jacksonville Thursday? I said, yes, thank you. Can you make this and that Friday and Saturday? And by the time we hit Sunday, Jerry Briscoe walked up to me and said, congratulations, you got a full-time job. This was May of 1980. Congratulations, we like your work and we'd like to hire you full-time as our referee. And I said, great. And that was May of 1980, and I've been working ever since.
It's funny, you mentioned Jerry Briscoe. I'm interviewing him tomorrow, so I can mention that story to him.
Oh, he's a very dear friend of mine, and I see him. We have lunches. We have a Legends lunch every month or every 8 weeks or something, and all the legends that live in Florida, we all go meet and have a nice time. I just saw him, Jerry Briscoe. Jack Briscoe was one of my favorite wrestlers.
Yeah, and the master of the figure 4.
Jr. Yeah, Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk used to have my goodness, great matches. My God, if you look back at them, no tables and chairs and all that. It was strictly wrestling back in the day. And Jack was a world champion. Dory Funk was a world champion. And Dory is a dear friend of mine after all these years. So I had a fantastic time. And Jack is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. He's in my top 10 list.
I think, yeah, he's in a lot of people's top 10, dare I say. I'm going to ask you this then. So, in the first few years you're refereeing, in the territory days and the NWA days, Florida, Mid-Atlantic, and wherever else you appeared in, was there any match that sticks out for one reason or another where it just went completely off the rails? Either somebody refused to do the pre-agreed finish, or it just all went to hell?
Well, there was some of that, but Dusty Rhodes was the booker. I went through a lot of bookers in the 10 years that I worked for Florida Championship Wrestling. I went through so many bookers, Wahoo McDaniel, Dory Funk, Dusty, and so on. And Dusty had such a well-oiled machine. There wasn't a lot of controversy about the finishes, or we were selling out wherever we went. Business was really good. So there wasn't a lot of that backlash, and one wrestler didn't want to do it. But once in a while there was. I remember I'm trying to remember his name. He was in the main event with Dusty, and the finish was something that didn't go exactly like Dusty had planned it. And Dusty was furious. He was mad because it fucked up the finish. And the people didn't know it, but we knew it. We're trying to do a program because we're going to continue working with this guy for several weeks. So Dusty said, "Hey, what happened? Did you give him the proper finish?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm either going to fire you or I'm going to fire," it was Dale Lewis. I said, "Oh, I'm going to fire Lewis." I said, "Dusty, I can give you the finish backwards." I was very good at what I did. And he knew that. So he fired the guy for fucking up the finish. So, little things like that. That was very unusual because we were a well-oiled machine back in the day. And I mean, it was like A, B, C. We did it fantastic. And I was a big part of that.
Yeah, talk to me about Dusty Rhodes as far as a booker. Now, he's got his detractors. Maybe he went to the well one too many times with some funny finishes and everything. But as a whole creative force, what did you think of Dusty with the pencil?
I thought he was genius. I thought he was ahead of his time, because you remember the era of like Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk. Those days were winding up. I came in on the tail end of all those guys, the end of their careers. They were finishing up their careers after 30 years on the road. I got to work with Bobo Brazil, which had a couple more years left, and Eddie Graham and so on. So what was the question?
It was Dusty Rhodes as a creative force. And
yeah. So he was ahead of his time. So at the end of that era, Dusty was part of the new era. And the Barry Windhams and the Mike Rotundos and Jake Roberts, before they were Jake the Snake Roberts, and all, we're on a learning curve. And Dusty was so creative. He was a genius, and he knew the business like the back of his hand, and everybody respected him. And he was just fantastic. Dusty was fantastic. He was ahead of his time. He was remember, he was working with 40 guys, and have the respect for 40 guys every week, and nobody questioned him. And he came up with great angles and things with Kevin Sullivan, the Devil, and Bob Roop, and all those guys, and the Snake Man, Purple Haze, which was Mark Lewin. Yeah, it was one of my favorite people, and King Curtis and all these guys. So he was very creative. And because it was a new generation for the wrestling fans, and they want to see something new. So Dusty came up with all this great stuff, man. Dusty, and I asked Dusty, I told Dusty one time after maybe a couple of years with him, I was working with Dusty, I mean, so close every week, every night. We were working 7 days a week, going to the same town. So I'd be Dusty's right-hand man, because heels and the baby faces wouldn't get dressed in the same dressing room. They would be across from each other. They were protecting the business.
So you'd be messaging back and forth, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So I was a guy going back and forth, carrying all the finishes. That's why my mind was so good for learning from Dusty. So after a couple of years, I told my father had passed away. And I said to Dusty, Dusty, I wish you were my father. I love him so much, you know, and he treated me like a son. He said, I am your father. I am your father. So that brought us closer together. And I love Dusty. If it wasn't for Dusty, we probably wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah, indeed. I'm going to ask about the Florida territory as a whole. When did you actually leave Florida?
I guess it was the end of the 80s. I started May of 1980 and went through until they closed it. And then the big companies started taking over: cable TV, WCW, Channel 17, the Superstation, and WWF Monday Night. Oh, I was on the first Monday Night Raw. I refereed on the first Monday Night Raw ever.
So I'll ask about that. I will ask about that. I will do it chronologically, but I'll ask about that a little later.
Okay. The wrestling was changing. And so I stayed here till they closed the doors. And then I went to WCW. And it was on nationwide cable, Channel 17, the Superstation came on at 6:05.
6:05 Saturday evenings.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. I asked this about Florida is because Eddie Graham committed suicide in the beginning of 1985 because there was bad business dealings and in his personal life, and the wrestling wasn't doing as well as it was.
Yeah. Who knows why people do that? But I was there. Yeah, it was a shock to everybody.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I'm yours. Go ahead. Yeah, it was a shock to everybody when that happened. Oh my goodness, we couldn't believe it. And Eddie Graham's son, Mike Graham, had a son too, and Mike Graham's son committed suicide, shot himself. And then I seen Mike Graham like a month or two after his son shot himself, and he looked like death. You know, when you lose a child, especially a child that committed suicide, and then he shot himself. So 3 generations: Eddie Graham, Mike Graham, and Mike Graham's son, they all killed themselves.
Yeah, with
why, you don't fucking know.
No, well, in Mike Graham's, if his son, I mean, I can see what happened there, but with the Florida territory specifically, when do you think was the heyday while you were there, and when was the change when there was a bit of a downturn, and what caused it?
Well, the heyday was from 1980 when I started. They were on fire. And the downfall of it was, there was really no downfall. It's just evolution. Times were changing, and the cables came out, and the nationwide TV, WWF, Monday nights, and WCW. You know, that's when the changes started happening. But it was changes for the good. It was time. You know, it was time. It brought wrestling to a whole new form. I mean, with sports entertainment. If I go to a party with my beautiful, tall, blonde Hungarian girlfriend, and we're talking, and people say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I say, "Oh, I'm in sports entertainment." And they sports entertainment, what's that? Then I say one word, then they get it. I say, Hulk Hogan, the most popular name ever in wrestling. I can't say Ric Flair because Ric Flair's a household name if you're a wrestling fan, but Hulk Hogan's a household name because of pop culture, and he's done movies, and he was the biggest star of them all. So I can't say Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes. I can't say any of the names but Hulk Hogan. It's the biggest name in the wrestling world is Hulk Hogan.
Indeed. Before we leave Florida, I have to ask, and I think it's the most asked question you ever receive. Lex Luger and Bruiser Brody in the cage match. You were the one who officiated it. But before I ask you about the match, give me your impressions of rookie Lex Luger, Bruiser Brody, who was a veteran by that point, where those two guys were in the career and what you thought about them.
Well, Bruiser Brody spent the bulk of his time in Japan and was a big star. And he was a little intimidating. He wasn't hard to work with. He was just Bruiser Brody. And after being a big star in Japan for so many years, and he started coming back to the United States and working here and there, he wasn't hard to work with at all. But he was, had a big personality, and And Lex Luger had just started in the business. I was there when we trained him. We trained him at Championship Wrestling from Florida. Hiro Matsuda trained Lex Luger. He trained Hulk Hogan. He got me sent to Japan. I was one of his favorite referees. So I refereed the match, Fujinami and Ric Flair, 65,000 people at the Tokyo Dome. It was like 92 or something. Was spectacular for me. Tokyo was one of my favorite cities. So those two guys, and they put them together in that cage match, and it was a bad booking. They should have never put Lex Luger, who's only been around for about a year. I was in the dressing room when we came up with this name, Lex Luger. We wanted to come up with a name, so this is his first TV appearance. So here we are, the bookers here, Matsuda, Dusty, Eddie Graham, Bill Alfonso's referee, and they was, what can we name them? And Mike Graham said, something powerful, like a gun, like a 357 or a bolt action machine gun, something like a Luger. And then they liked the Luger, and somebody said, Lex Luger, let's get a kick. And they loved that name. So we came up with that name. So anyway, he had trained for a year, and he was an athlete. He was a football player and so on, and a good looking kid. He had that good body and everything, but he never was a class A worker like Barry Windham. He had to work hard to, do what he did. It didn't come naturally. Mm-hmm. But he got over. So at the first year, they were handpicking his opponents and stuff, trying to build him. They wanted to build him as a champion and so on and so on. So it was a bad booking because they should have never put Lex Luger and Bruiser Brody in a cage match together, because with Brody's flamboyant personality and Lex Luger being green, they were handpicking his opponents. He was winning every match. It was just a bad booking. That's what led to that finish. I'll give you more details. Yes.
Well, I remember many years ago as a kid reading about this match, and there were rumors going around at the time. There was razor blades under the fingernails, the whole bit. It seemed to get like bigger and bigger and bigger. But as far as the match goes, what was originally meant to happen, and what did happen?
Well, originally they were supposed to have a cage match, and we were going to end up in some type of DQ or something, because we didn't want to beat Lex Luger because he's new in the business. We were pushing him, and we couldn't ask Bruiser Brody to do a job for this young kid, so we would do some type of DQ. So the match starts, and Lex Luger is used to working with these hand-picked opponents, and usually him 80% of the match and give the guys 20%. But Brody had different ideas, and usually, like, the senior in the ring would lead the match and call the match. And of course, that was Bruiser Brody. He had been in the business 20 something years and a big superstar and a great athlete, and he looked great. And Luger didn't realize that. And Luger was trying to do stuff on his own. He was, and Brody was waiting for him to listen to him. He said, hey, just listen to me, kid. But it was like a deer in the headlights. He couldn't really comprehend what was going on. And Luger tried punching him and so on. And Bruiser Brody wouldn't sell for him because it wasn't the right thing to do. Listen to me, kid, and I'm going to make you look like a superstar, and then we're having our match. But Luger couldn't get that, and he got scared. We spooked him there. And he said, Fonzie, I'm the referee. He said, Fonzie, you won't sell. What do I do? He didn't say I'm scared, but he said, hey, I don't know what to do. Brody wouldn't sell any of my stuff. And he's a big star by now. Every year in the business, we're pushing him really hard. And I said, well, why don't you grab me, throw me against the cage, and I'll disqualify you for manhandling the referee, but you make it look good. Throw me hard against the cage, and you pissed off at the referee, and I'll disqualify you. So that's what happened. He grabbed me right away, threw me against the cage. I took the bump, and I came up ringing the bell, disqualification. You can't touch the referee. And as soon as the bell rung, Lex Luger climbed over the cage, went to the dressing room, grabbed his satchel and bags and stuff, jumped in his car, and drove back to Tampa. He was that scared. He thought Brody was going to beat the fuck out of him. He thought Brody was mad at him. He thought he didn't know what to think. But Brody had it all along in his mind. Hey, I'm going to do my stuff. I'm going to beat the hell out of this kid and then give him his shine. And then we're going to the finish, which was the right thing to do. But Luger just couldn't comprehend. He was so young in the business. It was a bad booking. It was a bad booking. They should have never booked that match.
And you never know who's giving advice to Luger behind the scenes, saying you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So who knows what's going to happen? I'm going to give you a game now, a name association. You can't say yourself, but I'm going to give you a sentence, and you tell me who best fits that sentence or description. So the first one I'm going to give you is the funniest person.
James.
Oh, sorry, the funniest person in the locker room.
Oh my goodness, there's so many funny guys. Kevin Sullivan was quite witty and funny. Scott McGee, he was a young wrestler. Scott McGee, he was quite witty. Dusty was funny. Dusty was always funny. And if the locker room was down, Dusty would walk in and the whole locker room would get excited, you know. Yeah. We worked together every night, you know. Dusty was funny. Jared Briscoe was funny. Everybody had their personalities and everybody knew when to be funny and when not to be funny, you know. It was pretty cool, James.
Yeah. Last man standing at the bar.
Last man standing at the bar, and I can't say Fonzie.
You can't say yourself.
Okay. Who was a good drinker? Who was the last man at the bar? I'd say I'm going to put it on the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, because he was our leader. And when he left, we left. You know, we were trying to follow him. So Dusty was a good one. He was the last guy at the bar.
Okay. The most beautiful valet or woman wrestler in real life, not on TV.
Well, I'm going to name a couple of them. I thought Missy High was very attractive. Sunny, when she was in WWF, she was beautiful and she was very good on the mic. She was very good on the mic. So the beauty, that personality on the microphone, and knew how to do promos, devastatingly beautiful. And the girl who I beat her ass, Beulah, I thought she was beautiful. I had a match with her in 1997, 2 non-wrestlers, and they're still talking about the match today because I almost bled to death. We'll come around to that story when you're ready.
We might well do. The most bullied or picked on?
Like who we picked on a lot?
Yeah, who was the whipping boy, let's say?
Damn, I think there was not too many whipping boys because we were such a well-oiled machine in Florida Championship Wrestling.
It can be anywhere. It can be ECW, it can be WWF, it can be anywhere.
Usually, they would pick a guy out that was like in the preliminary matches and just starting. They would rib him a little bit. Jack Hart, Jack Hart.
Barry Horowitz.
Yeah, Barry Horowitz. There was several whipping boys, but whipping boys with a lot of respect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The smelliest wrestler who never washed their gear.
Damn hygienes, huh? Let's see. We'll come back to that one.
Okay.
Black Bart. He was Ron Bass's partner, Black Bart. He was a big kid, and he would sweaty up. So it'd get soaking wet in the ring, and then he'd grab his gear and jump in his car and leave after the matches. But it was one of them. There was quite a few of them, but mostly we were beautiful because we were representing how. Presentation's everything, James.
Exactly.
So when I went to the shows and when I walked into a building, I would have a nice sports jacket on because I'm small and I don't want to look like the audience. You got to look like a superstar to a certain extent. So if I walked in with a T-shirt, a pair of Levi's, and a whole pair of tennis shoes, they would think I'm the audience. So if I walk in with a nice blazer, beautiful, a nice white shirt, even a pair of jeans, and we used to wear boots all the time. Dusty got us into wearing a cowboy boots. So I had a pair of ostrich boots. I was beautiful, walking with my nice baggage and my nice watch, and I looked like somebody. You know?
Yeah, perception is reality, the old saying.
Exactly.
Most
Presentation's everything. Presentation is everything.
Exactly. Most dangerous situation you ever found yourself in?
My God, there's been quite a few of them. I'd say one time, the Bushwhackers, which is
The sheep herders.
the sheep herders back in the day, they were tag team and they were wrestling a kid named Tyree Pride and Bubba Douglas at the Miami Beach Convention Center. And the Bushwhackers got a lot of heat on the two baby faces, and the people didn't like it. So the people started throwing stuff. It was unusual back then for people throwing stuff in the ring and, and cause a ruckus. And then it got more into like a riot. So we were trying to come back from the ring, and the referees always had heat because if the bad guy, if the heel beats the babyface by putting his foot on the rope and I don't see it or something, 1, 2, 3, they would be mad at me. So, and that would happen quite frequently. I had to learn to work around that and learn how to not get heat on myself. But it was almost impossible when we were doing a big angle. So coming back from the ring, man, I'm looking from the ring all the way back to the dressing room. It's like a 200-foot walk is a long walk back there, and the people were and the cops didn't have control, and we were walking back, and I walked back with the sheep herders, man, and they were throwing stuff, and one old man pulled out a knife and tried to stab one of us. It was crazy. In fact, Roddy Piper, we were in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the same type of situation. The match is over. Roddy Piper beats like Ricky Steamboat on some type of fuck, you know what I mean? Like pull out the brass knuckles, they hit him, put him back, the referee doesn't see it. And this one old man, we were walking back from the ring, and people were mad at Piper. He just beat Ricky Steamboat, which was beautiful and could work his ass off, and then people were mad as hell. And so somebody in the audience coming back said something. So we turned to the guy who had said something, and this old man pulls out a little pocket knife. This old black man, I'd say he was in his late 70s or something, put out a little pocket knife and stabbed Roddy Piper right in the gut. And you know what I mean? That was pretty fucking heavy. Didn't cause a lot of damage. Thank God it was a little pocket knife, a little case knife about that big. So that was quite eye-opening. There was a lot of finishes that the heel would go over and the people would be very mad.
But you specifically, if it was
me
was your
and
fault.
the heel, yeah, and the referee used to catch a lot of heat. And I tried to design my part where I can do my job properly and not get a lot of heat on me.
I'll name you this next one then. The clumsiest wrestler that you were ever in the ring sharing.
Yeah, the Columbia.
Two left feet, just awkward.
Usually those guys don't last in the business. Usually if you're an asshole in a dressing room or if you don't have the talent, they don't last. They don't last. So everybody I worked with was pretty much polished and big stars and very good. So there was not a lot of left feet guys in the, man, I'll come back to that question. I'm trying to think of somebody.
Okay, I'll move on then. The best and worst celebrities that you ever met through wrestling.
Oh, I've met so many celebrities, and Chris Christopherson, Natalie Cole. My God, they were all very cool. And remember, they were guests at our shows, like at WrestleMania. No assholes, but everybody was pretty cool that I've met. And of course, I warmed up to them. I'd go up and introduce myself. I'm Fonzie, I'm the referee. And they'd always say, "Oh, you're so small. How do you let those guys manhandle you and stuff?" So I'd try to get a conversation going with them. And, just so many cool celebrities,
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds, all those guys, everybody was pretty cool because they were our guests.
With this next one, I'm going to say the most talented wrestler you were ever in the ring officiating with.
Well, there's so many different talents, and so that's a big field. I thought Barry Windham was very talented. He used to have great matches. Dusty Rhodes, in his own way, was so talented, and he was a big guy, so he didn't bump around and stuff. But Barry Windham, Dusty, Harley Race, Ric Flair, of course. Hulk Hogan had that big shine. He was very, talented. And he didn't do a lot. He used to drop that big leg, and he didn't take a lot of bumps, but he's had 11 back surgeries throughout the years, and all he did was drop the big leg. You know what I mean? He never bumped and went through tables and all that. So not like these other guys like Van Dam and Sabu who did all the tables and stuff. Sabu can barely walk right now after abusing his body like that. But those few guys that I mentioned, Barry, Harley Race was one of my favorite champions. Ric Flair, of course, flamboyant, very cool, big personality.
Yeah. I'll give you this last one, then we'll move on to some regular questions. The most memorable backstage fight that you ever saw?
Well, I didn't see a lot of backstage fights, but I did see we were doing TV, Florida Championship Wrestling. We would tape TV every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. We had to check in, and we would tape 2 TV shows. And we were all in the dressing room. We were looking at the monitors, and Blackjack Mulligan was there. And Blackjack was sitting, and remember Barry Windham's his son, and Kendall Windham had just started breaking into business. They were training him, and he was just getting his first year on. And so a guy named Buck Robley, an old-time guy from, I think it was from Texas or something, Buck Robley, he walked in the dressing room, and Blackjack Mulligan's there, and he says to Mulligan, "Hey, Mulligan, do you have any speed? The amphetamine. Yeah. Do you have any speed?" And Mulligan didn't say anything. He's got his 2 kids there, Kendall Windham was just breaking into business. He's barely 20 years old. And so Blackjack doesn't answer him. And the guy says, "Hey, don't kayfabe me. Everybody knows you're the biggest speedhead in the business." He should have said that. All the boys are like, "What the hell did he just say to Mulligan?" So Buck Robley went into another room, and Blackjack got up and followed him into the other room and closed the door. So it was just those two. And then all you heard was boom, boom, boom. And fucking Mulligan came out, sat back down in the same spot. And then Buck Robley came out about 20 minutes later with a big shiner on his eye. And so he straightened his ass out. Remember, Mulligan was huge. He was a giant in his own way. So he beat the hell out of him. There was a few different little fights here and there, but they don't really stand out.
No, more skirmishes, but that one sounds like a good one to end that on. I'm going to ask you about the WWF. I'm sorry we're skipping all of the NWA. Tight for time and everything, but I've got a billion questions about the WWF, and I'm going to come back to WrestleMania in a minute. But one match that you officiated that I think really is probably still underappreciated, although it's maybe been revisited more recently, is Bret Hart versus Doink the Clown / Jerry Lawler, SummerSlam 1993. Do you particularly remember refereeing that match?
Well, there were so many matches, James, that I refereed. It's hard to pinpoint those because remember, we did some of the same matches all over the country. So say we did that match in Las Vegas, and then we did the same match in New York. We did the same match in Texas. Similar, it changed it up a little bit, but what was the question?
It was SummerSlam 1993.
Oh, do I remember any of that? I remember Bret Hart being badass. He was very good in the ring, and he was beloved by the people, and quite the worker, quite the superstar. And he could do anything, and the people just adored him,
well, if you don't remember it, I'm happy to move on. I've got a million other questions.
Was there anything particular that happened in that match?
Yes, there was. It was Doink first, and then Jerry Lawler was feigning an injury, and obviously it was a fake injury, and then they have their match, and then Bret Hart won't let go of the sharpshooter at the end of it. But apparently he keeps it on for so long and so legitimately that he really hurt Lawler on purpose for a receipt a couple of months earlier.
Well, that happens once in a while. You give a receipt, that happens. It's only, we're working with these, we're on the road 7 days. We're on the road 300 days a year with the same guys. And there's bound to be some animosity or some, some receipts coming back and forth. So that happened quite a lot, receipts. But that particular night, I think Jerry Lawler overstepped his bounds, and Bret Hart thought he was Bret Hart, which he was, and he put that sharpshooter on. Yeah. So
gave him a bit of a lesson.
It was a natural occurrence.
Well, I'll give you this one then. You'll remember that because you mentioned WrestleMania 9 before. We'll get to WrestleMania 9 in a second. But how did you end up in the WWF? Who brought you in? Did you have a meeting with Vince McMahon first, or were you just put on the crew? I've got a million questions of that, but those two.
No, here's how that went. How I got in WWF. I was in WCW first, and you remember Giant Gonzalez, the largest professional athlete on the planet. They built him as 8 foot. He was like 7'7", and he needed a personal assistant at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because he couldn't drive. He barely spoke English, and eventually he spoke English perfect. But they needed somebody to be his valet on a shoot, So they asked me. Dusty was a booker in WCW. Fonzie, we got the Giant here. He needs a personal assistant. We think you're perfect for the job. I want you to fly with him, drive him around, get him to the shows, get him to the hotel, anything you want. I got some good stories about the Giant you're going to like.
Oh, yeah, please.
So we were all on a set pay for WCW. So a new management came into WCW. His name was Jim Herd. Mm-hmm. He had nothing to do with wrestling. He was a manager or a big shot in like Pizza Hut, the chain. He was like a big supervisor, whatever the fuck he did in corporate world. So they wanted him to come in and shave some, because we had a lot of big expenses. So the first thing Jim Herd says to me and the Giant, hey, we want you guys to take a pay cut. These figures aren't exactly true, but I'm going to give you similarity. So say the Giant was making $400,000 for the first year, $500,000 for the second year, and $600,000 for the third year. And I was making, 6 figures small, 100 first year, 125, 150 the third year. So Jim Herd wanted to come in and shave some of the big expense. So he asked me and the Giant, hey, we want you guys to take a pay cut, to keep. We didn't want to take a fucking pay cut. That's not in our contract. No way. So the Giant came to me and said, Fonzie, they want us to take a pay cut. I don't want to do that. What are our options, Fonzie? I said, well, you can go back and play European basketball. That's where we found them at, in European basketball, because Ted Turner owned the Atlanta Hawks basketball team. They wanted to bring him over to that, but he couldn't pass an inspection for NBA because his knees had already been damaged a little bit. So they said, hey, don't worry, Giant, if you don't make the NW the basketball, we have a wrestling company, we'll make you a big star. So they wanted to take a pay cut. We said no. And the Giant said, what are my options? I said, well, you can go back and play European basketball, or you can go to Japan and just wrestle maybe 20 weeks a year, like Bruiser Brody. And because you're a novelty piece, you're the largest pro athlete. Even if he couldn't work that good, he was just, he would draw because he was the largest athlete on the planet. And he says, Fonzie, you know anybody in WWF that we can call? Maybe Vince would take me and you. I said, yeah, I know J.J. Dillon. He's the assistant booker for Vince McMahon. And he said, well, call him. So I called J.J. Dillon. I had worked with J.J. in Florida quite a bit. And so I called J.J. Dillon up. I said, J.J., this is our deal. They want us to take a pay cut and we don't want to. And we're weighing our options out. We can go to Japan. We can go back to European basketball. Or if you're interested, we can come to Vince, to WWF. And this is all on the phone. And he said, well, let me run it by Vince. And see what he says. But thank you so much for the phone call, Fonzie. So he says, I'll be in touch with you. So we hung up. 20 minutes later, the phone rings. It's JJ Dillon. He says, of course, Vince loves it. Oh, come on up. When can you come up and have a meeting for Vince? With Vince. I says, anytime, JJ, because the Giant just had an operation on his foot. He had like a spur, so he was out for 2 weeks. So it was perfect timing. I said, well, he said, can you guys fly up tomorrow? I said, yes. So I said, the Giants got to have him first class because he's 8 foot tall. And me, you can put me in coach or whatever. So JJ sent us 2 first class tickets to Connecticut. He had a driver pick us up. And we went right to Vince's house. Usually you would go to Vince's office at, in Stamford.
That's a sign he was really interested then, wasn't it, if you went to the mansion?
Right. We go right to Vince's home and he welcomes him in. He's amazed at the Giant, and he says, oh, I know you too, Fonzie. You're athletic. You move around. You're a great referee. I said, thank you, Vince. And I said, we're a package deal. Because I'm his personal assistant, plus I referee, so you get 2 things in one. And he says, JJ, give him a job. And I said, well, we still have to finish up in WCW, and they owe the Giants $60,000 for his next check. He says, don't even go back to WCW. Fuck them people. You come with me. JJ, write the Giant a check out for $60,000. That's a signing bonus. The Giant says to Vince, hey, Vince, I haven't been home for Christmas in 3 years. Can I start in January? And Vince said, oh, of course, we'll give us time to come up with your gimmick and all that. And he says, Fonzie, do you want to start in January too with the Giant? I said, no, sir, I'd like to start as soon as possible. And he says, JJ, get Fonzie, put him on the booking sheet. So they added me on the booking sheet, and JJ's giving me some name of the towns, and it says MSG. And I said, JJ, where's MSG? He said, Fonzie, that's Madison Square Gardens, because WCW never ran up there because that's Vince's territory. So my first week in WWF was going to Madison Square Gardens because I was blown away. The biggest name, the biggest venue on the planet. Nobody's bigger than Madison Square Gardens. You can name 20 venues. Nobody. So I was thrilled. So that's how we got to WWF, me and the Giant.
Can I ask then, this is just a very quick question, then I'll ask the major question is, if you were the personal assistant to Jorge, were you then on ring crew as well with the rest of the referees, or were you not?
No. Never put up a ring in my life.
Right, okay, then that's the question answered. The main thing is, were you in
I was more valuable in the ring and in the dressing room like an assistant booker. Yeah. They would use me more that way than putting up the ring and so on and so on. When you're in, or were you in the meeting with Vince when they pitched the outfit to Giant Gonzalez with the body spray and the fur and everything? Did you look at that and go, what? Well, at first we did, but it looked okay. It was different. And the Giant really the only thing the Giant had going for him was being 8 foot tall. Not 8 foot, but 7'7" or whatever. But built him as 8 foot. And he had, his regular outfit on, and it didn't stand him out. His size stood him out like Andre, but so we didn't like it at first, but then we said, okay, this is Vince's club. He knows what he's doing, so we're fine with it. But people ask me that a lot. Well, what's up with that outfit? But, it is what it is. And we went along with it because Vince was paying us big money, and we're not going to second guess Vince.
With Giant Gonzalez, he doesn't really last very long, maybe until September or something like that in 1993. Was his just wrestling just not up to par, or was it injuries, or why did he end up leaving?
It was his health. He had a Giant's disease like Andre, but he didn't. Andre died at the age of 43, and Giant Gonzalez used to tell me all the time, said, Fonzie, I got the Giant's disease. I'm going to die young like Andre, and his body was already. But Andre had the full-fledged Giant's disease, like his jaw was protruding, his forehead was big, his teeth were big. He was this the hormones don't tell him when to stop growing. So he kept growing, but the giant didn't have that yet. He was developing it, but he was still good. He was from Argentina. He was a tall, good looking, proportioned, he looked great. He was beautiful, actually, good looking kid. And the women loved him. Oh my God, the women loved him. The women loved him. So
is acromegaly is the disease.
Yes, exactly. We call it the giant's disease. It's short, but he ended up dying at 47, I think, 47 years old. And it used to break my heart when he used to tell me, Fonzie, I'm going to die early, But the reason he left, because his knees were already given out. He had made a couple $1 million from WCW and Vince and all that. So he was set.
So he didn't need to put his body through that, all the travel schedule and road schedule.
Yeah, and traveling was different. It was getting more difficult as time went by because we were working 7 to 10 days straight and then home 3. Work 7 days, home 3. Work 10 days, home 3. And it was just repetitive week after week after week. And it just was not kosher for the giant to make all those trips. It was wearing them down.
Yeah. I'll probably just edit this bit out. Are we okay for a bit of time, or do you want me to start wrapping up the main couple of questions?
Keep going, Daddy. Keep going.
Good man.
If we don't get enough, if we don't get everything in, we'll do another one day.
Yeah. Do you know what? No one ever gets enough in of what I ask. I've got so many questions written down, but I'll ask a couple more.
We'll do part 2. I'd love to be at part 2.
Good man.
We haven't talked about Barry Windham getting shot 1 hour before he wrestles Harley Race. We haven't talked about Roddy Piper shooting an alligator. We haven't talked about the near plane crashes. We haven't talked about many things. So
we haven't even talked about ECW. We haven't talked about WCW. We haven't talked anything. Yeah. I tell you,
James, how are we doing so far? You think we're doing okay?
Yeah, I think we're doing all right. Yeah, we're doing good stuff. We're getting good content, and at the end of it, we're going to see all of your merchandise, and we're going to do all the plugs and everything like that as well. But
James, thank you so much, and thanks for all the UK people for listening to the WSI, Daddy, with James. Big broadcast on YouTube, Daddy. You're the man. I heard. You know, a couple 100,000 people. I'm proud of you. Congratulations on your success. Hey, you wouldn't be where you're at if you didn't love the wrestling business like I do. I can tell right off the bat when I talked to you this morning. I can see that smile. I can see you were enthusiastic and you love the business like me. That's why we're here so far. I've been in 42 years. I've been doing this. So obviously I love the business, and I can tell you love the business too. So congratulations on what you're doing.
Thank you very much indeed. It is it's the most interesting business in the world, I find, because it's part rock and roll, it's part sports, it's part stand-up comedy, it's part acting, it's part everything, and then it's part big business as well. And I particularly like TV rights, and in things like that, like a sports your sports and entertainment lawyer would probably find more interesting, but that's the stuff I love to hear about as well. But before I ramble on anymore, I'll ask a couple more, then we'll do the big finale. You're not rambling,
you're doing fantastic. I love your setup. You've been you laid out. I was worried. I told my niece Angelica, she helps me out, and you were communicating with her. I said, well, I'd like to talk to James early so we get a little format for the show, but we didn't need one. We're just rolling on fantastic, James.
You don't need, I don't need a I've done this enough now, dare I say. I've stopped getting nervous before interviews, and I've stopped and I've stopped worrying about stuff so much, so I can just, but the thing is, do you know why I don't get nervous anymore? Is because I over-prepare. If I don't over-prepare, then I will get nervous. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Good for you.
Yeah. Can I ask you, just before we go off WWF again, and WrestleMania 9, it was one of the most distinctive-looking shows as far as the venues in Las Vegas. It was outdoors. You had the Roman theme. It was a great thing.
Yes.
Can you give me some memories of the day? And also specifically, Hulk Hogan worming his way into the WWF title at the end of the night, if you remember that.
Well, Gorilla Monsoon, that's 7-city, 5-country tour I told you I was on: London, Germany, Edinburgh, Scotland, France. Gorilla Monsoon said, the golden goose was dead. Hulk Hogan's time was over. And that was far from true, because when we did that 5-country 7-day tour, it was sellout wherever we went. So the Golden Goose, Hogan said, Fonzie, tell Brilla Monsoon the Golden Goose still lives, Daddy. So it was just his popularity that they put the strap back. It was still the top of the biggest name in the wrestling business, the biggest name ever.
Did you ever referee a Hulk Hogan match?
Yeah, on that 5. Yeah,
oh, you actually did.
Hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them, and I was a referee when we went on the 5-country 7-city tours every day. It was him against Yokozuna, sold out everywhere, and those matches were easy. All Hulk Hogan was go like this and go like that. It was pretty easy, and the people loved it. People loved it. So yeah, Hulk Hogan's a cool cat. He's still a friend of mine. We were both born August 11th. He's a few years older than me, and he lives right here in Tampa Bay. He's 25 minutes from my house, so I see him frequently at the airport, or he invites me over for lunch or something once in a while. He's a great guy.
All ex-wrestlers live in Tampa, or at least in Florida, as far as I can tell. You're from all over the place, and then everybody goes to Florida because because it's also, apart from the sun, it's a great hub to fly out of.
Yeah, it's a great hub. It's a great area. The Tampa Bay. I mean, we have pro football, we have hockey, we have baseball. We got Tom Brady, the big quarterback.
He was with the Patriots, wasn't he? Originally?
Yes. We have fishing. We're surrounded by water. There's year round. It's like we're in the dead of winter now. It's December, 9th or whatever it is, 10th. And it's 81 degrees outside right now. I'm in a pair of shorts. I just walked down and watered my garden in my shorts and no shirt, So it's the weather. It's good for the guys. Tampa International, we can go anywhere in the world. I can fly out and be anywhere in the world in, 12 hours.
Do you know how much I hate it when people tell me how nice the weather is where they are? When it's freezing cold, it's rained every day for 3 weeks straight. It's just the worst. Storm after storm after storm here. It's already dark.
Well, we have our bad days here too. We get hurricanes and stuff like that, and we get a lot of rain. But other than that, man, Tampa Bay is a really nice place. If you ever come over to the United States and you come into the Florida area, you make sure you call me, and I'll host you for a fantastic lunch. I'll take you out for some Cuban food. In fact, you can stay at my place for a couple of days. I have a 2-bedroom, beautiful little villa.
Wow.
And my tall Hungarian blonde girlfriend would love to host you. She likes my wrestling friends.
That is a very kind offer as well.
I'm serious on that, James. You come over, you make sure you call me. We'll figure it out where you can come spend a couple of days with me.
You need to take me to a theme park. I love theme parks. I've never been to Orlando.
We're an hour from the biggest theme park on the planet, Disney, and we got all kind of events, all kind of stuff here for you to do. I'd love to host you for a couple of days.
Do you know what? I will. If I ever make it there, and I say when I make it there, I'll make sure to hit you up as well. Definitely.
Absolutely. I'm 100% sincere on that.
Yeah.
100%.
I'll buy lunch. That's the least I can do.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give you a couple more questions. I'm going to go a bit of ECW, then I'll give you the main event, and then I will thank you for your time so I don't take up too much of your time. And
hey, don't wind me up, Daddy. You're talking to Fonzie. I can talk all day long, baby. Don't wind up, Daddy. I haven't told any of my stories yet.
You can't say that to me, because I will keep you day and night asking questions until you keel over from like dehydration or something.
All right, Daddy. I'm yours. I'm your boy right now.
I'll tell you that. I'll give you the first of ECW then. So who in ECW recommends you for the job, brings you in?
Paul Heyman. I had just left. I was in WWF, and Paul Heyman and I have been friends for years. In fact, before he got his big break, I was assistant booker in Florida at the time. This was in the early 80s. Bob Roop was the booker, and I was Bob Roop's assistant. And Paul Heyman came in. Similar situation, like I went to Texas with my friend. Remember, I was a tag-along trying to get a job. Paul Heyman was tagging along with a guy named Tombstone, who wasn't a big name, but had a great body. He was from Baltimore. So Tombstone was booked in Florida, and Paul Heyman came in and was riding around with him for the 3 months, the summer. And so Tombstone was leaving, and Paul Heyman comes up to me and says, Fonzie, Tombstone's leaving in 2 weeks. You think it's possible if I come to the ring and be his manager for the last 2 weeks? I'm trying to break in and this and that. And he had a pair of jeans on, a pair of old Converse, a t-shirt. I said, well, you certainly can't come to the ring like that. Do you have access to, can you get a suit and, so on and so on? Look like $1 million. I said, oh, of course. I didn't know his family's wealthy from Scarsdale, New York. He got plenty of money. Didn't know any of that. So he comes to the ring with, his nice suit on, and Tombstone's going to put, for the last 2 weeks, put Scott Hall over, the Razor Ramon, but it was Scott Hall back then. So we let him come to the ring for 2 weeks, and he never forgot that. Then he left and became a big star in AEW and WCW and all that. And we worked together in WCW. So he was a friend of mine, and he knew that I was leaving WWF. And he called me up and says, hey, Fonzie, I have this company. I haven't heard from Paulie in a while, so I get a phone call. It's Paul Heyman. Hey, Paul, how you doing? Oh, my God. We talked shit for a little while. And he said, Paul Heyman says, the reason I'm calling is because I have a company called ECW. I said, what the fuck is an ECW? So you remember, I worked all the major, I never worked an indie show in my career. I'm working Florida wrestling, Mid-Atlantic, WCW, WWF, and so on, Japan, all that. He says, well, this is a little indie company we have, and I got a perfect spot for you to come in because you're just coming from WWF. Conservative sports entertainment and family entertainment. Vince wants the doctor, his wife, and his 2 kids at ringside. ECW was 19 to 32 years old, 90% male was the audience, and violence. So Paul Heyman says, I want to bring you in to stop the violence, be anti-ECW, be more sports entertainment like Vince wants the doctor and his wife and kids. So I was excited about it. He said, well, I'll bring you in for 4 weeks and you try to stop the violence, but we'll continue on. And then we'll end up, they had a guy named 911 who was one of their big stars, choke slam you, and then you're done for the 4 weeks. We appreciate it. We'll pay you good. We'll put you on a flight. We'll put you in a hotel. I said, okay, great. So my character at ECW took off because people wanted to hang me because I wanted to stop their blood and guts and violence. So I was first. So the people hated me because, a little bit of blood, I'd stop the match. Do a table, I disqualify, so I ended up staying there. So he ended up putting me with Taz, and I ended up staying there 5 years. Yeah. And making a nice check and being on top with Van Dam and Sabu. That's why we're talking today, because of ECW. Now, if people just remember me as refereeing, that's fine. But my main thing is I'm a star. I'm still relevant because of ECW, because, I was on top there. So that's why I'm at all these conventions and stuff. Not because I was a famous referee and it was on my A game. It's because of ECW and all the publicity I got there and managed their top stars, Van Dam and Sabu.
I will get back to ECW and your career from referee to manager in a second, but I've got to ask you this. I've heard different stories on this, but do you remember why Paul Heyman was fired from WCW?
No, not exactly. Not exactly, but it's easy to get fired in the wrestling business, because we're a big expense. So say Paul Heyman was making $300,000 a year, and they were looking for a reason to get rid of him because they want to cut the expense. But Paul, very talented and was very good at what he did. So if you bring it up, probably you know the story. But
I heard ages ago that he may have been stealing or hoarding WCW paid for airline tickets. And back in the day, airline tickets were as good as cash before 9/11, and then you could just you could cash them in at the airport for different flights or just for money.
I don't think that was particularly the reason why they wanted to let him go. But I mean, if you got a stack of tickets in your bag and they're like money and not trying to fuck the company. Those tickets are yours. You know, they buy your ticket, you go do the show, and if you whatever. But I'd say that's not the reason. That maybe they said that because it's a valid reason to fire somebody. But that Paul Heyman his family was wealthy. He didn't need to fucking pocket the airline tickets to make a couple $100 extra. That wasn't the reason for sure.
Okay, with
who knows the real reason, but it wasn't that.
With going back to ECW, then you're debuting. Shane Douglas is the one who brings you in, or is given the on-screen credit for bringing you in.
Correct.
But then he disappears to the WWF straight afterwards. How come he was given the credit and then goes?
Well, we didn't know he was going to WWF. Nobody knows. Like if I hang up from you today, I'm working these indie shows and doing the conventions and working all over the country. If I hang up from you and tomorrow Vince McMahon calls me and says, hey, Fonzie, we'd like to bring you in for 6 months to do this special thing or do this and that, you don't know. You know what I mean? And then that could very well happen. Unlikely, because I've already been around the world. I've already worked, but that can very well happen,
Yeah.
So who knows why we didn't know Shane was going to WWF. Either did Shane. He probably got a phone call weeks after he brought me in and was working the angle. And then how are you going to turn down $300,000 a year or
exactly
or big money or the popularity?
Yeah.
So
when
a lot of guys did that.
When Shane, because obviously you'd already been in the WWF in '93, and it was a different climate in 1995. When Shane came back at the end of 95, early 1996, did he give you any horror stories from his experiences?
Well, I knew the experience. I knew how WWF was ran. I knew the ins and outs. I knew what happens. They're real strict. You can't miss flights. You can't do this. You can't do that. You got to dress nice. I know the whole system. So, no, there was no horror stories that he could tell me because I've been through all the horror stories and seen it firsthand. So nothing surprises us.
No.
Nothing surprises us in the wrestling business.
Do you think Shane's a bit misunderstood? Because back in the early 2000s, when I was reading all the news reports every day on the websites because I had nothing better to do, I didn't have a girlfriend. It always seemed that Shane was always had bad feelings with so many other people, from Ric Flair to Taz to whoever it was. It's like, is Shane just misunderstood? Because he's not a stupid person, he's a clever person.
No, he's very witty, he's very intelligent. No, he's super intelligent. And quite a hand in the ring. He was fantastic. I mean, he could go hardcore a little bit, which he didn't have to because he had so much other stuff to do in the ring. He brought a little bit of legitimacy to the wrestling. He didn't have to be hardcore. He didn't have to go through all the tables, but eventually he did like everybody else. But, he would be and he's very good on the mic. He's very witty, did great promos, and he was a good looking kid. He had a good body and, so he was great to be around. Good to have him.
Back to Paul Heyman then, I'll ask you this, is when was the first time you realised that maybe Paul Heyman wasn't the most honest person in the entire world?
Well, let's not use the word dishonest. You have to work around problems, and it doesn't make everybody happy sometimes. Like he had, we were a small company. ECW was a small company. We had no corporate sponsors. We didn't have anybody paying us extra. So these numbers aren't correct, but say ECW was making $10 million a year, but we were spending $11 million to keep it going. So we had to borrow money from Peter and Paul to pay Mary. So if it was dishonesty, it wasn't done intentionally. He had to work some angles to keep us going. And those rumors about bad checks and everything back in ECW, those were rumors. The 5 years I was there, I made great money, and I only worked Friday and Saturday, and made quite a bit of money, and never got a bad check. But there was money problems. Like I told you, no corporate sponsors. We were trying to make it. In fact, we were doing so good that Vince McMahon's son loved us. Shane McMahon loved ECW. and he turned his father onto it. And Vince used to pick our talent out, take our talent here and there. And in fact, Vince floated us $1 million, gave ECW $1 million to keep going. To keep going, he didn't want us to go under. We were barely making our payroll. We were barely paying the building. You know, we weren't drawing 10,000 people. We were drawing a couple thousand people at our biggest shows. You know, so it was very tight. Money was very tight. But whatever Paul Heyman did to keep us going, he had to do, and it wasn't dishonesty. It was what he had to do to keep us going.
Self-preservation.
Correct.
Okay, can you give me an example or even an impression of Paul giving a rousing speech to the troops before a big show?
Yeah, well, he was our leader, and he knew how to push buttons, and he knew how to get the most out of people. Like, say Sabu's in the main event, and with whoever, and he would give a speech on the tables and this and that, and just getting us all pumped up. He was very good at promoting his product to the boys in the dressing room, and he knew how to put everybody over, from Mikey Whipwreck to the first matches to the main event. He knew how to pick out people and make them feel good, and that would want to make us work harder. You know, we want to. Paul Heyman's our leader. And we wanted, everybody wanted ECW to work so bad, and it did. It worked fabulously. We were the third company, you know. And we went to Japan. We went all over the United States, and we did 22 pay-per-views, and I was on 21 of them. So Paul Heyman knew how to get the best out of people by putting them over and being proper and know how to talk and know what to do. Paul Heyman was a leader, and it's not an easy job. That wasn't an easy job, you know.
I'm going to ask you this then. You, in November to Remember 1995, your first ever match, you end up fighting Todd Gordon. What was your reaction when you were told, I imagine by Paul, hey Fonzie, you're getting in the ring for your first ever match? What was your reaction?
Well, I thought it was par for the course, because Todd Gordon's one of my dear friends. I still talk to him every week, and we became good friends. And he was the leader on paper of ECW. You know, he was the owner of the company, and Paul Heyman took it over. But it made sense, you know, because I was anti-violence. I was anti-ECW, and he was Todd Gordon was pro-ECW. So it made good sense to put us together. And it made good sense because we were two non-wrestlers, like the Beulah match. We'll get to that in a few minutes. So when I got on there with Todd Gordon, it was a natural fit. The people wanted to see him beat my ass because he was representing ECW, and I was representing non-ECW, non-violence. So, and it was good because he's a non-wrestler. He's a businessman. He owns a big precious gold. Yeah. Well, it's not a pawn shop where you take your TV in there and pawn it. You got to have precious stones, or he deals in diamonds and gold and such like that. So he had big money. So he's a businessman, and he's never wrestled before a day in his life. So they put him in there with me, and we talked a little bit about what we were going to do before the match started. And once we got in there and the match started, we rang the bell. It was like he couldn't hear a word I was saying, and he got me into the turnbuckle and started punching me in the head. And I said, Todd, loosen up. You're killing me, Daddy. He was hitting me as hard as he could, you know, not realizing it. He was beating me up, literally beating me up. But it was good for the match because, you know, I'm not going to complain. I took a couple of beatings, so what? But it worked out to be good. And Todd Gordon's one of my best friends from still today.
I was going to actually ask as well, did you practice your working punch on anybody or anything before you went out there? No, we just went out there and did our stuff. I think the natural way we did stuff was the better way to do it. Well, you're a non-wrestler,
you know?
So you shouldn't be wrestling
Correct.
like a wrestler. Exactly.
Correct. I couldn't do a sunset flip or a leapfrog or drop kicks or any of that. We more had like a street fight, you know. Yeah. It's the same thing that with Beulah. Same thing with Beulah.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this then as well. I keep saying I'm going to ask you this. There's another tick I'm developing throughout this interview, apparently. But this is a more difficult question. And it is, in fact, actually, just before I do ask that, what was Todd Gordon's role, apart from owner? What would he do? Would he field ideas? Would he help people with matches?
He was
What
in
would he
the
do?
office. He was, him and Paul Heyman were the bookers of the company, and they, talked and stuff, and went over stuff and went over angles and thought this would be good and this would be bad. Todd Gordon was pretty good at what he did, and he loved the wrestling business like we do. So he was great to work with. He was one of our leaders, He was one of our leaders, and he was financing the company too.
With that being said, in 1997, I think this is, and sorry, I'm sure you get asked this a lot. Todd Gordon ends up being apparently the mole who is facilitating ECW
and that's
wrestlers.
not true. That's not true.
Well, that's what I want to ask you, because your name is also mentioned at the same time with Todd Gordon, where apparently there was facilitating of ECW wrestlers to go to WCW. You tell me, you set me straight from what's true and what's not.
Well, for some reason they thought that because I was tight with all the guys in all the office in WCW, and they thought that they would call me and I would steal their talent. That was far from the truth. I didn't even know. Like the match before I had the match with Beulah, for some reason they thought I was negotiating with WCW for Sabu to go there, and I wasn't. I didn't even know Sabu went there. Sabu flew to Atlanta, had a meeting with Kevin Sullivan and the office people in WCW, and they wanted to bring him in. And they said, "Who do you want as your manager, Sabu?" And he said, "Fonzie, of course." I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this until it came out. And then they all thought I was the mold with Todd Gordon, but that was far from it. I didn't even know that Sabu had went there. I didn't know. They never called me and never went through me at all. But that was a reason for them to think that, because I was affiliated with WCW so good and I knew all the guys. They just thought that it made sense. I mean, how can they get a hold of all these guys? It's easy to get a hold of the boys,
Yeah, with the information from WCW, who funneled that information that Sabu had said you wanted to go as his manager to WCW, and how did that get back to Paul? Do you know that?
Well, Sabu told me that. He told me, he said, "Fonzie, you got heat because they think you're the mode and stuff." And I said, "I don't know why they think that." He said, "Well, I just got back from Atlanta and had a meeting with those people, and they asked me about who they want me as manager." And I said, "You, of course." And so that somehow spread out and got to Paul Heyman, but I didn't know any of that.
In the ECW documentary that WWE put out in 2004, they credit, they mention the whole mole story and Todd Gordon, and your name gets thrown in. But also in that documentary, people say that you were so loved in the locker room that they didn't want to see you go. And also they say that the Beulah bloodbath match that we are now talking about also apparently saved your job. Is that a fair thing to say, or was your job never in doubt?
That's a fair thing to say. I was beloved with the boys because I had been in the business 25 years already, refereeing all over the world, worked for these major companies, so I had a lot of experience. When I walked into the locker room, when Paul Heyman called me up and said, "Hey, I have a 4-week program. I want to bring you in ECW." I said, "What the fuck's an ECW?" So when it's time for me to go up, I walk into the locker room. I got a nice Submariner Rolex. I got my nice jacket. I got Louis Vuitton luggage. I walk in, beautiful hair, fucking cut perfect. And I walk in, there's Tommy Dreamer, there's Sandman, there's Taz, there's Van Dam, there's Sabu. I didn't know one fucking person in that locker room, but they all knew me. And Paul Heyman was creating his own stars. Sandman, he was one of our big stars, and he's still relevant today. I see him at the conventions all the time. So I was beloved because I blended right into the locker room, and I'm a good guy to talk to. I'm an honest guy. I knew a lot about the business, and people respected me, and I would talk to the young guys and tell them stories and help them out with their matches and stuff. I was very good at what I did. And still today, when I go to the conventions or when I do an indie show, I don't want to call them indie shows. When I do a wrestling show for a company like the shirt I'm wearing is CCW. They're out of South Florida, Coastal Championship Wrestling. I've been with them 2 years, and I'm beloved there because I help out. I do this, I do that. So I'm just well liked in the business, period, because I've been around for so long. I've done so much stuff, and people respect that. And I'm a good guy in nature. I'm a good loving guy, and I want to see everybody do well.
And with the Beulah match, of course, as suggested in the documentary, it went so well that it ended up working in your favour, and you ended up working till the end of ECW. But talk about the match. In fact, so it was 1/3 of your blood in your body you lost. Is that the true figure?
Right. So what happened was, so they booked a match. It was supposed to be a tag match, me and Van Dam against Tommy Dreamer and Beulah. And before the match started, we're all four of us out there, and something happens where Tommy Dreamer gets hurt and Van Dam gets hurt, and they're out of the picture. And Joey Styles says, now it's me and Beulah in the ring looking at each other. And Joey Styles says, Fonzie and Beulah? Boom, and the match started, and she hits me with the tin sheet on the head, and I get a little juice over my eye. I didn't mean to get that much juice. It was an accident, but it was, if I didn't get that kind of juice, we wouldn't be talking about the match today. It would have been just another boy versus girl, 2 non-wrestlers. But we had a great match, almost bled to death. We did some pretty cool non-wrestling stuff. We did oddball stuff. It was more like a street fight, and the match was spectacular. So my cut on my head was so deep that they couldn't stop, and that happened at the beginning of the match. So I got busted open like 30 seconds into the match, and I wrestled for 7 minutes with Beulah. So the match is over. I put her over, 1, 2, 3. Everybody's happy. I get back to the dressing room. I'm still gushing. Every time my heart would pump, blood would shoot out. So naturally, the paramedics were all over me, and they're trying to stop the blood. It wouldn't stop. So finally, they put some steel plate on my head, cold plate, and taped me up and rushed me to the hospital because head trauma. So I go to the hospital, and head trauma oversees everybody else. So they took me right into the emergency room, and I got several people working on me, and some nurse starts untaping me. I got the white tape around my head and the plate. And I said, hey, ma'am, don't take that thing off because I'm blood. She says, don't tell me what to do. I've been a nurse for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. I said, okay. So when she untapes me and takes the steel plate off, blood shot out like a foot all over her white outfit, all over her face. She was pissed, boy. So they continued. She was out of the picture. So they continued working on me, and they brought in the cables to, when you have a heart attack or something, they put those cables. They brought those in, and I'm fully conscious. And I said, "Hey, what are those for, Doc?" He said, "Just in case." I said, "Okay." So they were working on me, and they stitched me up and in and out, stapled me up, and it looked great. And they wanted to admit me in the hospital for overnight. I had a 7 o'clock flight the next morning. I said, no, I'm not going to stay in the hospital. They said, well, you have to resign the release. Our recommendation is you stay in the hospital. You lost all that blood. You're weak. You're this, you're that. We want to monitor you for 24 hours before we let you loose. That's protocol. And so I said, no. So I had to resign the lease form. And so the last thing the doctor says, Fonzie, we're on a name-to-name basis. The doctor loved me for some reason. He says, Fonzie, whatever you do, I want you to go back to your hotel room with somebody to stay with you overnight. You got an early flight. I don't recommend you get on the flight. Don't drink any alcohol. Don't smoke any pot. Don't take any pills. Don't do anything. So I said, okay, I signed a waiver and I released them from any lawsuits or anything. So they're wheeling me out in a wheelchair. They won't let me walk to outside, and there's a Sandman waiting for me. Sandman's got a 44-ounce cup from 7-Eleven full of ice, vodka, and cranberry. He's got a joint going and a fucking Percocet. So what the doctor told me not to do, I grabbed the drink, I take the Percocet, and I start smoking pot right after in the car. And, it was crazy. But I made it, and I made it home. And the match was good, and we're still talking about it today because I almost bled to death.
Did you get a transfusion?
No. They just put the line in me and gave me all kind of fluid and stuff and had me rest in the hospital for 4 or 5 hours before they released me. And remember, they wanted me to stay in the hospital for 24 hours. But they stitched me up and gave me some format to follow, follow up on stuff. And I did exactly the opposite from what they said.
With the blading, I don't know if this is the first time you did it, but I've heard a number of people say the first time they've ever cut themselves, they don't realise that it takes a little bit of time for the blood to come, so they do it and then go, well, nothing's happening. And then they do it 3 or 4 more times. Was that your experience, or did you just go too deep the first time?
No, I just went one time deep, and a lot of guys take aspirin before the match and it thins your blood out. So I took like 10 aspirin, you know what I mean? And I told the doctor before the match, I said, hey, I took a bunch of aspirin. And he said, oh, no wonder, your blood's so thin, it's flowing. You shouldn't have done that. I told him I had a headache. I didn't tell him I did that so I could bleed good, But no, it was just one swipe. And, I had got juice several times before that. So
tell me, Paul bonused you a little bit of money for your sacrifice.
Well, no, I was just my regular pay, and he was paying me well enough that was just part of our job description.
Nope.
So, he didn't pay Sabu extra to go through a table. He didn't pay Balls Mahoney to take a fucking suplex off the top rope through a table on a flaming fire. He didn't. That was part of our job description. So no bonus, no nothing. A pat on the back. Well done, Fonzie.
Exactly. You've got to be rewarded either with compliments or monetarily, and you got the cheaper option, I suppose.
Right. Monetarily, I had a job.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take it. Have we got a tiny bit of time left, or do you want me to start wrapping up with the last question, or it's entirely up to you?
No, whatever.
Okay.
Hit me with some more questions, and we'll walk through. I'll show you guys some of my jackets, and a couple pictures, and a couple of my whistles and stuff that I got that I sell at the conventions, and people are very pleased to see it. And I'm the only one in the country that, all the boys sell T-shirts, 8x10s, and hats. I'm the only one that's got whistles, a whistle that's made by Mattel Toys is pretty cool. You know what I mean? People love it because I'm known for blowing the whistle. So people like to get a hold of these things. In fact, we should give away one on your show right now. Say for the next asking question for your listeners, say, hey, the next listener who answers a question, whatever you want to come up with, and I'll send you a few whistles. I'll get your address after, and I'll get you a box of stuff. Some T-shirts for you and some whistles for you and a couple whistles for your listeners. We'll give them out on the show.
I'll tell you what, I'll figure out a competition for it. I'll figure out a competition. I'll do something, and hopefully all the listeners are in the UK, because then the postage will be cheaper for me.
Yeah, we'd love to hook people up in the UK, Daddy.
Do you know what, right, with the whistles, right? Did you get that from John Tolos, who was in the WWF as the coach?
No, Paul Heyman gave it to me. When I came in and did the anti-referee, anti-violence, anti-ECW. I'm a referee from the State Athletic Commission, Sports Entertainment. I didn't have a whistle. So when they put me with Taz, Paul Heyman came up to me and said, hey, Fonzie, I want you to wear this whistle. I want you to blow the whistle. And I said, blow a whistle? And I said, blow a whistle? I didn't like it at all. So I said, the first couple of times I didn't blow it that good. I'd blow it a little bit. But finally, the next week, I left the whistle at home. And Paul Heyman says, where's your whistle? That's your gimmick. I said, oh, I left it at home. I said, Fonzie, that's your gimmick. That's your thing, So if they didn't know my name, oh, you're the guy who blows a whistle, So the whistle became a part of me and ECW. And I'm known for the whistle, the whistleblower. So I had one created. Mattel Toys didn't make it, but I was on an airplane going from Florida to Los Angeles, and I was sitting next to a guy that was affiliated with Mattel Toys. And when she told me Mattel Toys, I said, hey, can you guys put me together a whistle little package so I can sell on the road? He said, Fonzie, we're $1 billion company. We can't mess with little Fonzie whistles. But I have a guy that we work with in Mexico that makes stuff for us. He says, I'm going to give you his number. And I called him and so on. So we developed this thing, and it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
And I probably sold a couple of thousand of them.
I will devise some sort of competition so I can give a couple away and promote further.
Absolutely. I'll get them out in the mail to you today after we get done with our WSI YouTube channel, big 200 to 300,000 people, Daddy. Well, I'm going to send you some whistles in a package today, some T-shirts, a couple of pictures. I'll send you some cool stuff for yourself and for your listeners.
That's very
Thank
kind
you,
of you,
everybody, for listening to my stories, Daddy. I hope you enjoy them. And if we possibly can do another podcast in the future, you people that listen today, shoot in some questions for James to ask me. If you have any specific, say, I met you in London in 93, or, I was in Los Angeles or whatever, whatever. Any questions? I'd be more than delighted to be happy to give.
I did that with Dutch Mantel a few weeks ago, and I got over 100 questions back, 100 responses, 120, 100, whatever it was. I asked one. I just forgot about them, and then we just got talking like how we're doing. I just got talking. I completely forgot the questions. But so maybe for part 2 we should do questions. But before we do the main event, and it's going to be called the Firing Line, where I'm going to fire some names at you, I'll ask a couple more things, then we'll close the podcast down, and I'll let you carry on with your day in the sunshine in your shorts. And I've got to ask this, is with you being a referee, when was the idea for you to become a manager? Because who figured out, aside from yourself, that you could cut a good interview?
Paul Heyman. I didn't know. Well, I had been around the business for over 20-something years before they brought me in ECW, so it was a natural fit for me to do anything related to the wrestling business. I've been around managers, I've been around bookers, I've been around superstars, I've been around Vince McMahon, I've been around everything. So it was Paul Heyman's idea to put me with Taz, and it worked out with the whistle and stuff. And at first, I was having trouble with doing promos. Like, say we were at the ECW arena next week, we're going to wrestle Tommy Dreamer. So I was having trouble. Take 1, take 2, take 3. And Paul Heyman and Tommy Dreamer came up and said, hey, Fonzie, what's the problem? You can't do a promo, you know?
And this is like at 3 a.m., isn't it? In a basement, yeah.
Yeah. And Tommy and Paul said, hey, just treat it like a shoot. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're going to be at the ECW. So I said, oh, that makes sense. So I know I'm going to be at the ECW arena. I know I'm going to be there May 10th. I know we're fighting Tommy Dreamer. I know this and I know that. So they created a monster. I said, okay, Daddy, this Saturday night at the ECW arena, me and my man Taz are going to kick Tommy Dreamer's ass. If I get a chance, I'm going to put my foot up Beulah's ass, Daddy. On May 15th at the ECW arena, come check out Tommy Dreamer getting the ass whooping of his life, Daddy. So they created a monster, and I was One Take Fonzie. Now they call me One Take Fonzie.
Did you get the daddy from Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, or is that just something you were saying anyway?
No. I think that's something that just developed because have met so many people, and it's hard to remember. I'm in the locker room with 35 wrestlers, and they come and go, and I couldn't remember everybody's name, especially the young kids. I can remember Hulk Hogan's name and, big names, but I can't remember all these. So I said, hey, Daddy, instead of saying, hey, giving the wrong name. So it just stuck. Hey, Daddy, it's like one of my trademarks.
With managing Taz, were you actually nervous about not being a referee for the first time and being a manager, and who sort of guided you?
I didn't have time to worry about it.
No.
I didn't have time to think about it. It was more on the fly, which I think was the better way. Just put me right into the mix and let's go. Let it be natural, So, and it developed naturally. So I didn't No, I didn't have no problem with it. I just adapted to it really good. I was lucky because remember, I had been in the business for years and years. So why wouldn't I be good at what I do?
Exactly, exactly.
And I love the business like you do. So,
Yeah.
it was a natural fit.
With Taz, you've got to give us a Taz story because I've heard so many. He's an interesting cat, and like Steve Austin, I'm using the word cat to describe someone. He's an interesting daddy. And did he take himself more and more seriously as time went on when you were managing him?
Yes. Um, Before he became Taz, he became Taz when Paul Heyman put me and him together as me managing him. He was several different gimmicks and he never got over. He was Monkey Boy, Tasmania, this, that. The gimmick never got over until they put him as Taz, and he was portraying his own self. He's like that outside the ring. He thinks he's tough, and so the gimmick got over. And he became himself. So they put Taz and me together. It was we built on each other, and he got over because he was Taz. He got over because he was playing his own self, which was easier to do than trying to portray somebody who wasn't.
Yeah. Did you spend a lot of time with him personally, or was it just an on-screen relationship?
No, just at the arenas, and would go out to dinner now and then. We're good friends. He's a marvelous guy. I love Taz. He's badass. He's a good guy. He's a shooter. He's sincere. He's a no bullshit guy. So we clicked really good. We clicked really good, and we're still friends to today.
Yeah, Taz's first words in a promo were sprung on him when Paul Heyman just shoved a mic in his face, and all he could think to say was, "Fonzie must die." And then afterwards, he was so upset that he was put in that position to do an interview that he grabs Paul by the lapels and says, "Don't you ever do that to me again." But then he becomes a great promo. Did you have any hand in helping him in developing his interview skills?
I think it was all natural, all natural. Everybody, gave him some advice here and there, but it's better when you do stuff naturally than you trying to do something somebody says. They give you a little format. Like I talked to you this morning and said, "Hey, we got a format for the show today. Make it easier." And you said, "Oh, I got questions. I got this and that. And we're ending up doing this." And at least have a little bit of knowledge. That's all we need is a little bit of a format, and then we can carry on from there. So we had nothing really planned. You and I had nothing planned specifically. And look how good the interview is coming out. I'm having a great time with
exactly.
James.
You got, preparation. I say preparation.
Yeah.
Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So if I've got nothing to speak of, then it ruins the interview, basically.
Well, I got enough stories to carry on, but it's always good. I've seen all your sheets, your 10 different sheets of questions and stuff. That's very good. That's why you're successful.
Well, there you go.
You gotta have
I'll show the main camera as well there. That's 3 sheets worth of full questions, so I'll never run out of anything to say.
You got to have some type of format, and then we just play by ear. This is the best natural way instead of working to people, just tell the truth. It gets over better.
They're bullet points. They're not a script like an actor. It's not like written by every word. Can I also ask, just before we move off Taz, we'll ask a couple of questions about Sabu. We'll get to the main event. But with Taz, the FTW title, do you remember when that was created? And as far as I understand, Taz was unhappy about not being world champion, so he made his own belt.
Something similar to that. I would say that's pretty accurate. And then the belt got over. And then, of course, me and Van Dam and Sabu beat him for it and took it, But it was pretty cool. Fuck the world. Taz was Taz against the whole world, the whole wrestling world. It made sense and it was good. And it fit his character, fit his character. Hey, if they don't let me wrestle for the world title, I'll make my own belt. Come get it, daddy.
With I mentioned Sabu as well. I've got to bring up Sabu. Maybe the most famous person you manage. Well, there's Taz RVD as well, of course, but I was associated with Sabu mostly. And on my very show, weirdly, I seem to have caught like an exclusive. He pretty much said that he was done with wrestling. He had too many injuries. He had a recent hip replacement surgery, and he was done. With Sabu, just talk to me about Sabu as a person. Talk to me about Sabu as an influence on the generation that followed him.
Well, when I was in ECW and they put me with Taz, and then my we got Taz over, and he didn't need me anymore, so he could be successful by himself. Paul Heyman thought it'd be a good idea to put me and Sabu together because he was a non-talker. I could do the promos for him and stuff, and it was a natural fit. And then once I told him the story, my first match, I made $90 for professional wrestling. It was his uncle, the Sheik, and Terry Funk in the chain match. He loved the story, and the Sheik stabbed me with a pin. A pencil, and I still got the lead mark in me today, 40 years later. So it was a natural fit for me and Sabu to be put together, and we worked great together. And then Van Dam was a part of that. And then the controversy with Van Dam being Mr. Monday Night, the whole effing show. And, we worked out perfect. Like, hey, I'm the whole show, and you too, Sabu. You know what I mean? And I'll be right in the middle doing my pro. So it worked out fabulously. We did some great promos.
Something about Sabu, he should have been an even bigger star. Really, he should have been. And he should have been, as other people have said, he should have been a millionaire by now, and he isn't. It's like, why do you think that hasn't happened?
Well, as time goes by and Sabu creates a big name for himself and becomes Mr. Hardcore, fire and tables and big bumps and this and that stuff nobody else was doing, and he created that spot for him. He was so beat up the first couple of years that I think that big offices where he's going to make big money, like WCW and WWF, didn't want to take the risk factor. Sabu's a high risk. His body's already burned out. So they didn't want to invest, $1 million in Sabu because, no telling it can go through day one and be his last match. So he was his own worst enemy by accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When I spoke to Sabu, whenever it was, a month ago, I got the feeling that he was somewhat stubborn to his own vision of what wrestling should be. Like, he liked the hardcore. He could wrestle. He could wrestle, catch as catch can, and chain wrestling and everything. But
he could do it all, yes.
Yeah, but am I right in saying that maybe he was too stubborn in his vision of just wanting to do hardcore, especially in the big companies?
Right, you're right about that 100%. You nail on the head. You hit it right. Boom. It was his own worst enemy.
Yeah. Do you think he should have learned how to do interviews?
Well, it could have helped, but he didn't because it made him mysterious, and it was a good part for me to take his place and do the interviews for him. So there were several wrestlers that did that, didn't speak much. They had a manager that spoke for them.
The Sheik. The Sheik didn't speak, did he?
Yeah. Nope. I don't think I've ever heard the Sheik speak. So it worked out to, made him mysterious, and he didn't need to learn how to do promos because of his gimmick, Mm-hmm. If he was going to go to WWF and be a single and be like everybody else, yes. But he didn't need an ECW. And made him more mysterious.
Yeah, exactly. So the only problem is that Vince McMahon doesn't like managers, and therefore, right. With Sabu as well. Just talk about how important he is in sort of like the in wrestling history. Let's say. I mean, how does he get the plaudits he deserves?
Well, I think he gets a lot of it, but I think he is left out sometimes because the tables and hardcore violence and ECW style, everybody started doing it after a while. And he was kind of the innovator of that hardcore violence, and he doesn't get enough credit for what he did. He doesn't get enough credit today. And I think that's a shame because Sabu is a bigger name than we give him. You know what I mean? Sabu was one of the first, and then it carried on. They're still doing it today. I was watching AEW, the new company that Dusty's kids run, and they're out of Jacksonville. And I just seen somebody go through a flaming table on there. So where did they get that from? From us,
exactly. One more thing with Sabu, and you can't mention Sabu without the injuries that he caused himself. How long did it take for you to realise that maybe you should carry some tape and some crazy glue in your pockets just in case?
Well, that match he had with Terry Funk in the Bob Wire match, which is a great example. He would get hurt all the time and do crazy stuff and somehow get through it. But that match with Terry Funk and the Bob Wire match, what happened was the guys who set up the ring, there's like 3 or 4 different strands of Bob Wire. One strand is small, and the next strand is bigger to keep the bigger cattle, and the next one is the bigger prongs. So the ring guy who set up the Bob Wire match bought the wrong kind of Bob Wire. He bought the strongest, biggest, most vicious Bob Wire, and he had to put it up, and it's too late to take it down. We're in the middle of the getting ready to start the match, and he said, "Oh my God, I bought the instead of buying the small one." So Terry Funk has the match with Sabu, and they get into it, and Sabu throws him in a turnbuckle, and he moves, and Sabu comes in a turnbuckle and rips his bicep from here all the way down to his elbow, and it was like an inch wide. His meat was hanging out. When that happened, he went into shock for a minute. He says, oh, went into shock. Like, you've seen your whole fucking stuff hanging out. So he went into shock and he yells, Fonzie, give me some tape. So I ran back to the dressing room and grabbed some white tape. That's the only thing I could find. And I bring it out to him. And by now he's out of shock, continue on the match. And you'll see him during the match putting the tape around his around his wound. And Terry Funk gave him a reverse neck breaker onto a steel chair. It was fucking fabulous. He's doing the tape as a reverse neck breaker. Boom. So after the match and everything, we had to cut him out of the barbed wire and barbed wire in his hair and stuff. And so the paramedics are back there, and we have a doctor on hand. And he says, "Okay, doc, stitch me up." He says, "Oh, you need to go to the hospital." He says, "No, stitch me up right here. No anesthesia, no nothing." So he starts stitching him. First of all, I had a hard time getting the tape off. So when he starts stitching him up, he was in so much pain that he said, "Okay, stop. So Fonzie, go to 7-Eleven and give me some super glue." Now they have medical super glue that is used, but back in 95, they were developing the super glue for the cuts. So I went to the 7-Eleven and bought some actual super glue full of toxics and stuff, and he finished after like 40 or 50 stitches. He put the rest super glue and closed it up. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, but it worked. And, that's a famous match.
How did he not it probably must have got really infected. With that ring as well.
He made it through. And if you look at it today, you'll see that big ass scar,
Yeah.
And for some reason, God was on his side and got him through it, and he didn't get any toxicity from the petroleum in the, in the super glue.
Yeah, he escaped a much worse fate somehow as well with the infection.
Yes.
Very, very quickly with the ECW reunions, how can you compare One Night Stand in 2005? That was WWE's version to TNA's 2010 Hardcore Justice reunion.
I think anytime that any ECW guys get together for a reunion or be at a convention or a signing or matches, ECW is so beloved that it brings out the fans, and they're thrilled to see us all put together, even if it's just 2 or 3 of us, like me, Sandman, Sabu, or 3 or 4 of us, or Mikey Whipwright. Anytime they put us together, we get a great reaction because of the ECW. And when they have a full-fledged reunion where they get as many as ECW superstars, from Francine to Tommy Dreamer to all of us, people love it. We made a big mark in the wrestling industry in 95, and it's still relevant today after all these years after it's done. It keeps me relevant. The only reason I'm talking to you right now is because of ECW.
Exactly. I will now go to the main event, as I've been promising for the last couple of hours, and I call it the firing line. What I do is I give you a name. You can give me, it's like word association. You can give me a word. You can give me a tiny little story. You can say you've never met them. You can say you love them. You can say whatever you want. So the first name is, and it's all ECW. And the first name I'm going to bring up specifically over a Porsche court case, Missy Hyatt.
Oh, Missy Hyatt. Was great. She had been in the business for a while. We were on Judge Mathis, the like Judge Judy and all those people were a half-hour segment. We went on Judge Mathis together because I wrecked her Porsche. And we thought it was a good idea to go on Judge Mathis and get that publicity. Any publicity is good publicity. So we did that. Missy Hyatt's quite the body. She still looks great today. I'd see her. In fact, she just came up. I work for a company out of Cleveland called AIW, and they bring in a name every once in a while. They bring in like the $1 Million Man and so on, and Ted DiBiase, and they brought in Missy Hyatt, and she looked great. So she's a good friend and still looking good. And those big titties, she was beautiful.
This next name I give you, I'm hoping you've got a story to connect to Missy Hyatt. The name is Paul Varlins, the ex-UFC fighter.
You know what? That name doesn't really bring out much memory, but I'm sure you got some stories about Paul.
Well, no one wants to hear what I've got to say about that story, so I'll just leave it there and I'll move on.
Okay.
You mentioned him before, Kevin Sullivan.
Oh, Kevin Sullivan was great, and he's still a good friend of mine today. We used to ride together in Florida Championship Wrestling. He was there with King Curtis and Purple Haze and Luna Vachon and Bob Roop, and they had that devil gimmick going, and he was quite the guy, and he's still a really good friend of mine. I just texted him a happy birthday last month.
Is he in Florida still, or where is he?
No, he lives outside of Washington. Well, Washington State. He's on an island right outside of Washington State. There's a little island there.
Okay, next name is, or names are, the Pitbulls.
I see Gary Wolf. He lives in Florida. He lives about 30 minutes from me in Newport Richey. So I see him. We have lunch now and then. He's badass. The Pitbulls and the other one, Anthony, passed away. They were badass. They were the real McCoy. Badass, hardcore, and what a lovely guy. Lovely guy. He still looks great, and I speak to him all the time, and I see him maybe every month or so we get together.
Who do you believe was at fault of the broken neck? Was it Gary or was it Shane?
I think things happen. You can't pinpoint it on either one of them. They know what they're getting into. They know it's really hardcore when you get into the ring. Anything can happen to anybody at any given time. I mean, the first match, you get a broken neck. And there's no animosity against either one of them. It just happened. Things happen. And he got through it good, and nobody's mad at each other. And it was good for the business. Yeah,
it was good for the business as well. I spoke to Francine as well, and she told me all about that night. She said she was really scared for her life when the Shane rocked the halo. Yes, yeah. And we used to rib. I ribbed Gary Wolf with the halo on. I would come in, and he'd be sitting in the dressing room getting dressed or whatever, and I would have a hanger with my shirt on, I'd hang it on his halo. Hey, Fonzie, I'm not no bugger. I said, oh, thanks, Daddy. I thought you were perfect for that. So we rib him a little bit. God bless him. He's a good guy. He's a good rib as well. Next name is Jason Knight.
Jason Knight was around for a long time. I met him several different times. I worked with him several different times. He was okay. He was a good guy. He was perfect for what he did. He was a middle guy, and he got along just fine.
John Cronus.
John Cronus, Eliminator?
Yeah.
Too bad he passed away so young. Him and Perry Saturn were a hell of a team, and he was a big kid, and he could work his ass off. I got nothing but compliments to say about his career in the ring, and he was quite a performer.
Big Dick Dudley.
And a funny guy.
Oh,
and a funny guy. Yeah.
Big Dick Dudley is the next one.
Big Dick Dudley. He was didn't speak much, had those glasses on. He was quite the character, and he played his part really good. He did his role really good, and I'm not sure if he passed away or not. I think he did.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, I've heard he was like an absolute. He barely ever wrestled, but he was like in real life, really tough dude.
Yeah, he would. That when the part was his gimmick. He was one of those tough guys that lived in the Northeast, New York, Philly area. You got to be tough up there.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was badass for real.
Dawn Marie.
Dawn Marie was beautiful, and I see her once in a while at a convention or something. Stunning. She had a good spot and well liked by the boys and the audience. The fans liked her.
Jack Victory.
Jack Victory had been around the business for years and played his part well. Great guy to have on your team.
Do you remember Louis Dangerously? I think he was signed guy Dudley as well.
Yeah, yep. I see him once in a while. He's very intelligent. Had a nice spot. In ECW, the sign guy. Yeah, great guy, and well liked. I love him. Yeah.
Tell me the story with this next one, Hayabusa.
Hayabusa, badass. Didn't we have a tag match with him and somebody else, Van Damme and Sabu, in one of the pay-per-views?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All those Japanese guys were good. Tajiri and all those guys. My God, the matches he used to have with Mike Awesome. Man, how they get through those hardcore stuff. I'll never know. Mike Awesome was big and strong, and they would beat each other up, man, in that ring. It was unbelievable what the stuff they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, with some of the stuff that they're doing with high flying and stuff. I mean, Hayabusa, I believe he ended up breaking his neck, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like it wasn't like a lion salt or like a moonsault off the ropes, and he ended up breaking his neck. And it's like, oh,
it was something that we did a million times before, and just
one time.
Yeah, things happen, man.
Yeah.
Look at the guy with Rey Mysterio worked with, and the kid died in the ring. I think it was in Mexico or something where he did that Rey Mysterio spot where the guy hangs over the second rope and Rey does the spinning thing where he hits him with his feet. The kid was already dead when he did that. Somehow he broke his neck and died right there in the spot.
Perro Aguayo Jr., I believe that was. Tammy Sitch.
Tammy's, I just saw her along with Missy Hyatt. She was the following month, came in AIW in Cleveland, and she looked great. She's aged well. She put on a couple pounds, but she's still beautiful and still witty and charming, and people like her. I like Tammy. I thought she was one of the most beautiful girls in the business at one time because she was so good on the mic when she was in WWF and grabbed that mic and that good-looking broad to be doing those promos. Man, I thought she was hot, and she was.
Yeah, definitely
still hot. I got a naked picture of her. I'll send you. Her and Missy Hyatt are posing naked. I'll send you that
picture. I've seen a clip of the DVD. A brief clip. I turned it off quite soon afterwards.
Yeah, they weren't all that. Good for them, you know.
Hey, if they made the money, that's
I'd marry her. I'd marry her for a weekend.
I thought you had the tall blonde Hungarian at home.
Well, she went to work, but I'm just saying that.
You can say that now she's gone to work.
Yeah, God bless her. I love my girl.
I'll give you a few more and then we'll close the podcast down. Brian Lee.
Oh, big Brian Lee, badass. He was a big kid, and he that was the Undertaker's boy.
Yeah.
Him and the Undertaker were good friends. And we used him quite well. I thought he was legitimate and a big kid and could do his stuff, and no problem. He was he was a team player and a ball player. I like him a lot.
Wildfire Tommy Rich.
I go back with Wildfire Tommy Rich. He was the hottest thing on the Superstation, Channel 17 at 6:05. He was Jim Barnett, who was one of the owners of NWA. He loved Tommy Rich, and boy, he was on fire back in the day. and he's still relevant today. I see him once in a while. I got several pictures. I worked with him at Florida Championship Wrestling. I worked with him in WCW. I worked with him in ECW, and quite the character. Wildfire Tommy Rich, country boy.
Did you ever party with Wildfire?
Oh yeah, I party with all of them. Yeah, and he knows how to party. Believe me.
Go on, give me an evening with Tommy Rich. How does it go? What drinks do you start out with? What other things do you have over the evening?
I think he was a beer drinker, and I don't want to say he liked it, but there was cocaine involved well, when you're working for Vince and all that, you drug tested, and you couldn't party like that. But in some companies, you're wide open, and there was a little cocaine use, a pill here and there, a lot of marijuana, and he liked his Budweiser.
With Tommy Rich, I mean,
and a great guy, but see, he can do it and still perform.
With Tommy. You've got classics like Stan Lane, Ricky Morton, Tommy Rich. Of all the wrestlers you saw, who was the one who could just click their fingers and 100 girls would be making a beeline to them?
Damn. All of us. There was girls lined up, man. I'll tell you a story about Giant Gonzalez and a girl if we got time.
Yeah.
But we were celebrities, and the girls that used to come to the matches wanted to just be around us, but any given time, the girls would love us. Girls loved us. It doesn't matter if it was Wildfire or Fonzie,
if you were on TV.
Guys, yeah. And some guys were single and some guys weren't. And the single guys would, have a great time with the girls.
And the married ones would as well.
Occasionally, yeah, that would happen.
You've got to tell us the Giant Gonzalez story now. Come on.
All right, Giant Gonzalez. Remember, I told you the women loved him. He was a tall kid. He didn't have the Giant's disease yet, so he was well proportioned. And I was his personal assistant for 3 years, all around the world. Mm-hmm. So, and we would never split a room together. We'd go to the Marriott. I'd be in 21, and he'd be in room 22. We'd never split a room, but. So it'd be normal for me to get a phone call at 3:00 in the morning and say, "Hey, Fonzie, I can't sleep. I'm hungry. Would you mind going to get me something to eat?" And that was my job. Literally, people say, "Oh my God, he called you while you were sleeping, made you get up and go." No, he was my friend. They were paying me big money to be his personal assistant, and that was my job. And hell yeah, I'm going to jump up at 3:00 in the morning and take care of the Giant. We became super friends. I didn't care if I made extra money or not. We became super friends. So I get a phone call. It's 3:00 in the morning. We're in California. And that day we were walking around the mall, and I mean, not wrestling girls, but like housewives at the mall, and people would be so amazed at his size. And he was such a good looking Spanish kid. He had that charm, and the girls wanted to see what he was all about. So I get a phone call at 3:00 in the morning, and he says, "Fonzie, can you come to my room for a minute?" I said, "Okay." Now I'm thinking he's wanting me to go to McDonald's or drive through and go get him 5 hamburgers and 2 orders of French fries, or go to Denny's and get him 6 eggs and bacon and sauce and all that. I thought it was going to be one of those nights. So I go over, I knock on his door. He opens the door. There's a Giant, 8 foot tall, naked. I said, "John, what are you doing naked?" He opens the door a little more, and there's a beautiful blonde girl in the bed, naked. I said, "Damn, okay, Giant, what do you need? Do you want some food?" He says, "No, we got a problem." I said, "Well, what's the problem?" Now he's saying, "Well, I want to get with the girl, but my dick is so fat, I can't get it inside her." Right? So now I'm embarrassed. There's a girl waving at me, naked, beautiful blonde girl. And she's saying, like, and she says, "I need you to do me a favor. I need you to get with her, and I need you to pump her a little bit. And then once we get her pussy wet, you leave." And I'm embarrassed as fuck. And the girl saying, "Please, Fonzie, help us. Come on in. It's okay." So now my job description for that night is prepping a girl for the Giant so he can get laid. You know what I mean? So that's a great story. So I get in there, I do my job, I jump on the girl, beautiful. I get her a little bit. She says, okay, leave, Fonzie, you're pushing his way. So that's a crazy fucking story, right? So, it's a crazy story. The girl was thanking me. Oh, thank you so much. I was embarrassed as hell. My face was red, but she was good looking, so I had no problem doing it. But that's quite the story,
Yeah, but you get kicked out the hotel room with a hard on, and you're just like, oh, what do I do now?
And the best thing about it, the girl was saying, please help us, Fonzie. Oh, thank you so much. She was very cool. And had nothing to do with wrestling. He met her at the mall. She was like a housewife or something. Beautiful. She looked like Tammy, like Sunny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A memory you'll treasure. What are friends for? Hey?
Right. So that's kind of a cool story. I've done all kind of different things in the business, but that's one of the oddball things that's, when I tell the stories, people will say, what? Okay, what a job you had, Fonzie. Yeah.
And that's okay, Daddy. That's a lesson for everybody else as well, is you buddy up with the tallest friend you have, and then get a hotel room next door to him. You never know, your luck might be in one night.
He was the tallest professional athlete in any sport on the planet for a few years. Only person who came close was a Chinese kid that played basketball for Houston, Ming or whatever his name was. He was real tall, kind of a freakish tall. So that's the only, and he wasn't as tall as my giant. So yeah, and I was hanging out with the tallest professional athlete on the planet, and one of the top 10, one of the tallest guys in the world at that time. There's a tribe in Africa where they're all skinny and real tall, but he was from Argentina, and I got to hang out with him, so that was the blessing.
And the basketball player never rang you to say, "Listen, can you get the girl warmed up for me?" So,
oh my God, can you believe that? Can you get the girl warmed up for me? What a story! I tell the story. People don't believe it. People don't believe that story, but it's actually 100% true. Exactly how I told you. The girl was naked on the bed, saying, "Come on in, Fonzie. It's okay. Yeah, but help us, please."
Hey, listen, you call it right down the middle.
Yes,
exactly. I'll give you a couple more names.
That's one of my things.
We will do a couple more, and then I'll call it a day. Well, actually, we'll do a bit of a look at the merchandise. But
how long have we been on? We've been on over an hour, right?
Oh, for God's sake! Yeah, we've been over well over an hour. Oh, I'm sorry. I will hurry up then.
No, don't hurry. I'm just saying we've been on an hour. We haven't covered everything, but we've had
covered nothing.
We've had good conversation. I hope everybody in the UK enjoys it.
Most of the viewers are American anyway, so amazingly, 65% are American.
Oh, great. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. And I love doing these things. And I'm good at it. Yeah. Pretty good at it.
Anytime as well. Anytime. There's definitely a part 2 in here somewhere. I'll give you a couple more names and we will call it a day. Cyrus, Don Callis.
Don Callis, Cyrus the Virus.
Cyrus the Virus.
Pretty cool cat. Worked with him here and there. Intelligent, super guy, and was glad to call him a friend.
Jazz.
Oh, Jazz, probably the best female wrestler, especially back in ECW. Back in that day, she could work like the boys do. She was badass. We get along great. She's still relevant today. She still works a little bit in the ring, and I see her at the I see her at the conventions and stuff. Very, very talented and a sweetheart and good looking and a friend of mine. I love Jazz. Yeah, badass.
She was like the female Taz, wasn't she, in ECW?
Yeah, black and beautiful.
Yeah. Sally Graziano.
Oh, Big Sal, the big
Sally,
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty cool. He was limited what he could do because he was so big, you know what I mean? But he carried his weight. I remember him carrying little Guido.
Oh, you're getting a phone call.
Yeah. I remember him carrying little Guido on the shoulders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Walking out to the ring. And I can see him in that green T-shirt with the full-blooded Italians with Tommy Rich. Wow. Hey, Tommy Rich, he's a full-blooded Italian, It was funny. It was great. I love Sal.
I can't let you go without getting a story from you about the final name I'm going to give you. Passed away a few months ago, New Jack.
I was with New Jack WrestleMania weekend. WrestleMania was in Tampa at this football stadium, and usually a week before the WrestleMania, there's all kind of shows going on that week. That trail around WrestleMania, like autograph sessions, little conventions, signings, and stuff. So I was on 2 or 3 of them that week because I live in Tampa, and plus I do it every year. WrestleMania weekend, I'm in a show doing something, and New Jack was on the show. I got a poster somewhere with it was Tony Atlas, Sergeant Slaughter, Fonzie, the Bushwhacker, New Jack, and several other Virgil, a bunch of wrestler guys. And I went over and seen New Jack. We were all sitting down doing autographs at the tables and stuff. And him and I went and had lunch that day, and then he dies a couple weeks later. Hell of a talent, hardcore, badass. He was a real McCoy. He was unpredictable. He was aggressive. He backed down from nobody. And he was legitimately a badass bounty hunter, all that stuff. He said he's killed a few people by self-defense, whatever. You know what I mean? And I believe it. Great story, great guy, but could snap. And, you say the wrong thing, I don't care who you are, Sandman, whoever, he'd fucking blow up to you. But a great guy, New Jack, all around.
You mentioned the Sandman. Were you in the locker room for whatever that was?
Sandman and
Sandman and New Jack. Yeah, Sandman told an off-color joke.
Something happened and then New Jack didn't like it and threw a beer bottle at Sandman and it busted all over the wall right next to his head. But that was settled that night. Something that just rubbed him the wrong way, and Sandman didn't know. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have said it if he didn't mean anything vicious or any, thing personal. He just said what he said, and that happened. But that just shows New Jack can snap. We all thought it was funny, and New Jack didn't, and he called Sandman out on it. He said, "Motherfucker, threw the bottle at him."
Have you got any other New Jack stories where you maybe dived over the wrong balcony, it went too far, or something in a bar, or something in backstage? Apparently, he used to chase a lot of people, trying to kill them backstage, and not necessarily wrestlers. It could have been anyone.
Well, we were at the ECW arena in Philadelphia. There was a Holiday Inn by the airport that we all used to stay in, and we were all checking in, and I had already checked in, so I was sitting in the lobby on a couch, and some guy sat right next to me. He didn't know I was affiliated with the wrestlers because I didn't look like a wrestler, and he was sitting next to me. He said, "Damn, who are all those guys? Who are those big guys?" And I said, "I think they're professional wrestlers. I'm not sure." And he says, "Well, they don't look that tough to me." And I said, "Well, wrestlers are pretty tough." He said, "I could fuck one of those guys up in a minute." And I said, "Hey, fat boy, you couldn't even fuck your own grandmother up. Who the fuck are you?" I'm trying to pick a fight with him, and he didn't like what I said. And he challenged me, he picked me right up, and I put my face in his chest so he couldn't hit me in the face. So he could only hit me in the head. So the guys are checking in. They turn around. They see this guy. Oh, he was a rugby player. He played rugby, professional rugby player. So he's a pretty tough cat. So he's pounding on my head. And New Jack turns around and says, "Hey, look, that guy's beating up Fonzie." That's all he had to say. Then I got 10 wrestlers. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't know if I had backup. I'm not going to pick a fight with somebody. But the guy was mouthing off being a smart ass. So I laid it on him. So New Jack was the first one over. He said, "Hey, somebody's beating up Fonzie." They fucked that guy up. He was crawling on his hands and knees out of the fucking front door at the Holiday Inn. The doors open automatically. He was crawling. He got in the band. His boys wanted no part of all the 10 guys. I think Coronas, a bunch of guys were there checking in. So they were all beating his ass. They were almost rocking his van over when he got in to try to flip it over. So he was pretty cool.
That's a great
story.
And
we take care of each other. We take care of each other. The wrestlers take care of each other.
Well, do you know, were you party to the parking lot brawl in 97 or something like that? Oh, no, it must have been 98 maybe 99, and apparently Tammy started it, Tammy Sitch.
Yeah, which one? I don't really remember, but there was a lot of incidences where, we got in a fight with some smart ass, thinks he's a big wrestling guy, it's the same guy, but wrestling fans are funny. Most of them are cool as hell. 99.9% of the wrestling fans enjoy it. They love what we do. They're into it. They know us. But once in a while you get a smart ass that, wants to defame us or talk smack about us, but that's unusual, but the same guy who would spit on me at the ECW arena would buy me a cocktail at the bar after, you know what I mean? They just get carried away. And we're doing our job. If we were making people mad or something or making them happy, we're doing our job.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to shut this podcast down. We've spent, do you know what? I'm looking how much time we spent together, and it is a lot more than I thought we had. I didn't even look at the clock. The time has flown by.
That's cool.
But before you go,
we had a good time. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, but not enough, quite frankly. So there's got to be a part 2 in it somewhere. But before we go, you wanted to show all the memorabilia in the room, and there's tons of it. I saw the NWA belt as well.
Well, I got a few things which I'm proud to have. That's my grandson's belt. I had it, copy made for him. I refereed so many matches with Ric Flair and Harley Race, and that was the belt,
Yeah.
So I got a couple of things that I do. I make shirts. I'm known for making shirts for like all my pay-per-views, all my events that I make, that I work. So just recently, we did a reunion. There was a convention in the daytime and wrestling matches at night. And I tagged the shirts, ECW people, Van Dam, Hardcore Legend, Sabu. And there's a date on it. Then I sell them after, you know what I mean, after I wear them. And there's just some of the stuff that I wear. There's a company in AIW that I work for, CCW that I work for. There's the Beatles. I love the Beatles.
Yeah, man.
I got tons of pictures. Oh, here's some of my stuff. Not for sale, but like when I go overseas or something, I, pick up jackets from Berlin, Tokyo and stuff. There's some kind of cool pictures that I have. And I sell all these pictures. I make copies of them and stuff. Hey, look, I'm not short. There's Hulk Hogan. Look at Giant Gonzalez, how tall he was.
Yeah.
Crazy. Andre the Giant. There's all kind of pictures. There's Dr. Dusty Williams, Terry Funk, Fonzie. This picture was taken in front of the
Rivera Steakhouse. Yeah.
Famous steakhouse in Japan, There's me and Todd Gordon, WrestleMania 9, Giant Gonzalez, The Undertaker. Another picture with, remember Tatanka?
Yeah, of course I do, yeah.
Yeah, Tatanka and Giant Gonzalez. So I got some cool pictures, and I got a lot of pictures where I'm on the cover of magazines. If I'm not on the cover, I'm definitely in the magazines. There's Kevin Sullivan, Dusty back in the 80s, and just a few stuff. Of course, my whistles and some jackets that I make. People seem to love them. I put the ECW patch, and I'll put a picture on the back and sell them, and people seem to like them.
Well, you say you're selling these, so where can people, apart from conventions, obviously, where people can buy stuff off you?
Well, people can hit me up on my social media, and I respond. I check my social media out all the time. And I got pictures and T-shirts, and of course, my whistle's the number one seller, and I sell them for $25 signed. I'll send them right out. In fact, when we get done, I want you to message me your address so I can get your stuff out today. You'll have it in a week or two, whatever it takes to get overseas. But
give your social media then. So give your social media as well. So where can people find you on? I know you can be found on Instagram.
My Facebook, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, Instagram, Twitter. You can message me on any of those, and I'm not hard to find. And I look at them all the time, and I have my niece who's beautiful, who you've been communicating with. She helps me out too. And so, here's another jean jacket. This is a really cool jacket that, it's got my name on it, Manager of the Champions, Hardcore Legends Tour, the ECW patch, and then, me, Van Dam, and Sabu on the back. People love those. And, I sell them for $200 or $300, whatever the market bears. People seem to love them. and I'll, sell a couple and I'll make a couple. Pretty cool. I give a lot of shit away. I give a lot of 8x10s away to, especially the whistles to kids or anything. They cost me a few bucks to make. And this is a number one picture that I sell. It's still relevant today. People love that. People love that picture. I got all kind of pictures of old pictures with me and Ric Flair and Dusty and all kind of stuff that I can make copies of and sign them and send them out. But that's about my repertoire on merchandise. I'm not trying to get rich. I'm just trying to keep things going, and people seem like the Fonzie merchandise.
Yeah, keep the wolf from the door, exactly. So you can be found on Facebook, you can be found on Instagram. I will link for everybody in the comments and description. So if anybody wants any merchandise, just hit Fonzie up and then he'll sort that out for you. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Carry on.
Do not forget to ask a couple questions so your listeners can get a whistle. I'm going to send you 2 or 3 whistles to give away, and then I'll send you a couple for yourself and some 8x10s and stuff. I'll make you a nice little package, some T-shirts from the different companies I work for. I'll send you a nice package, and please give away a couple of whistles to your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely, I will do. So listen up, everybody. I will figure out a competition, and we will do that. We'll get rid of we will give the whistles away to a lucky winner. Get rid of, for God's sake. And,
absolutely. I'll autograph them, I'll sign them, and just, it's very cool. Thank you so much for doing that. And people love free stuff. And people love the Fonzie whistle. Yeah. So
hey, I love free stuff.
Giveaway.
And I love the Fonzie whistle as well. I'll hang it on the wall somewhere. I'm moving office soon, actually, so I'll hang it up on the wall in the new office.
I got some stuff coming for you, James. I'm going to send you a perfect little package. You'll be very happy.
Thank you very much. So remember, everybody, there's a competition on the way for Fonzie's whistles that we'll probably do in the new year. But for now, thank you very much for being with us once again this week. And on behalf of Fonzie, Bill Alfonso, we'll catch you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Daddy. Let me blow my whistle. Take us out.